Much blessings to all of you beautiful souls out there right now. Sending the love, sending the vibrations right here. We got a huge, absolutely massive, slapping knowledge download coming today. Amazing guest with us today. MEM, DVG, Conscious Minds TV in the building. Come on.
Thank you, brothers. Thanks for having me on, man. I really appreciate this, and yeah, I really look forward to just us having a nice conversation and me learning from you guys as well. It's like I was telling Adriano before, it's not always about you trying to preach at the same time, which we should do as well. We should give knowledge, but we should also always try to learn from, no matter who it is and what their knowledge capacity is. We can always learn from each other. So that's the main thing. And yeah, just really look forward to us having a nice discussion.
Beautiful words already, man. I'm lighting a candle in that.
Yeah, I've got my candles lit in the back as well, man.
Yeah, we're setting the chorus.
Yes, my little shrine I have. Just, yeah, man, you got to kind of keep your space nice and have a nice feel, and then hopefully that will bring good vibes to yourself as well. Like,
yeah, I think it's important to have like a little altar, a little shrine, just a nice kind of space that remains sacred 24/7. The altar, the shrine, whatever it is, having that space, I think is key. You know, I don't always practice what I preach. Sometimes it becomes a bit of a mess. But
no, that's right. We don't always practice but what we preach. But there's a saying, like the whole abracadabra saying, "I create what I speak." Well, speaking about it is at least you're putting it in your mind and you're creating an intention. Like, so at least you're halfway there by talking about it. So then now we've just got to work on matching that with doing it as well. So it's like, because like sometimes I say that to myself. It's like I'll tell people stuff and then I think, yeah, but I'm not doing it and I'm not perfect and this, but it doesn't matter as long as what we're sharing is of good, like of helpfulness to someone. It doesn't matter if we don't practice it. Well, it does. We should practice it. But what I'm saying is, if you're telling the person something good, regardless of whether you practice it or not, at least you're just passing on some wisdom. That's what I'm ultimately trying to get at.
So it's all right. It's all right to preach it.
Yeah, it is, because just say, for instance, I preach something, yeah, but I don't do it. But what I preach, someone else might go ahead and follow that. Well, they're going to get the benefit out of it. So you're still doing something good. Do you get what I mean? Even if you're not doing it. So
it kind of also goes
that way that, as well.
Like the thing as well of like the whole there can't be good without evil.
Exactly.
Like seeing the good in the evil. Sometimes it's like, yeah, it's got its kind of cause and effect, basically.
Yeah, because one thing I realized, like when you first get into like looking into spirituality and then your life starts changing and then you think everything's going to start being rosy and you're just going to all of a sudden make that transition. Well, that's also a very unrealistic thing that we do. I did it, like thought, oh yeah, I'm not going to do this and then I'm not going to do that now. But it's working with what's around us as well, like that we've got to go out and confront society. We get affected by things like that from our family members. So it's not as easy as just becoming a guru overnight, if that makes sense. There's going to be pain while we're doing it because we've got to get rid of all our old habits and our 30 years of indoctrination. And so it's never going to happen overnight. Just to warn people who like think, oh, once they turn spiritual, everything's all rosy. That's not definitely the case.
It's usually the reverse, really.
Yeah, exactly.
It's usually the reverse. It's like getting. We talking about it on an episode like a while ago. I remember, and I was describing it as like you know, getting like pulled out of a room by the scruff of your neck. Do you know what I mean? It's like you're being yanked and you're watching all this stuff happening around you that you're not in control of it. And it's like, oh my days, this room is just slipping away. But like, yeah, it's the spiritual enlightenment. One heck of a journey, but we're all going for it.
For sure, bro. For sure.
So I think we usually start off like an episode, we just like introduce the day and we look at like the astrology chart. So this is like perfect.
I haven't even looked at the chart today. I know roughly where things are. But I know you've got Jupiter, Neptune, and the Sun all in Pisces at the moment. Yeah, we've got Saturn in Aquarius, obviously. I haven't obviously Taurus, Uranus still in Taurus.
Yeah.
That placement has been a pain in my ass for the last however many 10 years, because that's like in my 10th house. So that's down like to my career life, and my career and work thing for the last 6-7 years has been crazy. So I can't wait until that shifts into my 11th, and then hopefully things can start rolling again.
So let's get it. Let's see if I can find this one quickly. Because the last few weeks, I'm not gonna lie, I've been looking at this chart and like I mean, I don't really know what to say about it, to be perfectly honest. Right. Like I'm looking at it and I just like I'm seeing Lilith every day. I'm seeing Lilith just like she's in a trine with Neptune. And not Neptune, sorry.
You use this site. This is the site I use. I love this site.
Yeah, this site is the AstroSeek. Big shout out to Santos Bonacci. Santos Bonacci was the one that got me into AstroSeek for looking at the daily astrology. So yeah, for me, I've been seeing Lilith over here. That's where trine with Mercury and Lilith in Gemini. So for me, it was I interpreted that as meaning it was a time for us to talk about some of the stuff that we don't find it easy to talk about.
Yeah,
talk about it, communicate it. But apart from that, that was the only thing that was really jumping out at me. And the fact that they're all kind of sitting next to each other. All the planets are mostly sitting.
Yeah, they're all waxed. They're all like waxing as well, in waxing signs, meaning it's all from Capricorn going upwards, if that makes sense. So it's like it's going from, you know, like how the sun travels from Capricorn up to the Tropic of Cancer. It's in that cycle, it'll be waxing. Well, if you look at all the planets, they're all from Capricorn all the way to Gemini. So they're all going upwards, if that makes sense, from the bottom of the Tropic of Capricorn towards the Tropic of Cancer. So they're all waxing. So that means action. It means there's a lot of things going on. If it was going the other way, they'd be waning. That's a way you can look at your birth chart, and you could look at that straight away without reading it. And if all your planets are rising, then you'll be more of a get up and go person. Whereas if all your planets are setting, you'll be more laid back and more introverted. So it's interesting that all the planets are in all of the waxing signs, if that makes sense.
So does that mean the signs that go basically after the sign of Cancer, all the way then to Capricorn, they're the ones that are winding down?
Yeah, they're the waning ones. Yeah, but from Capricorn all the way to Cancer, that would be considered when the sun is waxing. So all them signs would be, obviously this is from a northern hemisphere perspective, by the way, because it's the opposite in the southern hemisphere. So yeah.
Okay, so I mean that can get us straight into like a. Actually, I'm trying to skip ahead and dive into astrology and stuff like that. I feel like, first of all, maybe let's give an intro into yourself. Like, it's a deep question, but who are you?
Who am I? Right. Yeah, I was going to tell you my name, but that's not even who I am really, because that was just a given name. So, yeah, I'm just someone that was born in London in 1983, November. I'm a Scorpio. My background is Turkish Cypriot, so I was born into a Turkish Cypriot family in the UK. Yeah, I wouldn't say I had any struggles growing up, like just the average growing up, friends, school, going to football games, going on holiday in the summer holidays with my parents. Yeah, just a normal, average life. Went to uni, got a degree in digital media. After that, I tried to look for work, never really happened. Yeah, and then I was working in a hospital for like 6 years. And then after that 6 years, obviously I got made redundant, and then I had to go and find a new job. And once I found this new job, I think it was at this part of my life that I started, the switch happened. And also, I didn't know this because I didn't know astrology back then, but it was this happened right my Saturn returns. People don't know what a Saturn return is. Saturn takes 29 years to go through the whole zodiac. So after 29 years, it will come back to where it was in your birth chart. And when this happens, you usually go through very, very big changes in your life and you have big lessons. And this was like in the around about 2013 and 2014 where it happened for me. But yeah, I had a job working, looking after people with mental illness. But at the same time, I started looking deeply into spirituality and like astrology and ancient mysteries and stuff like that. And then I kind of saw that, I kind of found myself a bit, and I felt like as a person that was kind of starting to understand what the whole model of society was and mainstream society and not liking it, I'm working pretty much for the government, feeding mentally ill people pharmaceuticals. And that was that conflict within me. And then I left that job, and after that I kind of just became a bit of a hermit for a few years and just went down the rabbit hole. And yeah, and it's just from 2014 to now, I've obviously the more of the like deep research was in my earlier years, but obviously you don't stop learning as you keep going on. And yeah, I could explain a lot more, but I don't want to kind of bore you guys like with my whole life story. But that's the gist of it, basically.
No, man, it's interesting. It's the introduction.
Yeah.
I mean, in terms of the spirituality, the spiritual path, then what kind of, is there like a reflection of like the before and after kind of thing of like, I see where I am now, I see where I was before, and this is like the change that's taken place in me now that I've like switched my kind of mindset, my beliefs?
Yeah, I would say that before, like in my old mind state, let's say, I would be a bit more of a yes person, meaning just go along, yeah, be nice, and I still always am now, like to be nice and to be kind and to be helpful for people. But I think that since I've gone through my like spiritual stage, I think I've kind of stuck up for myself a bit more and become a bit more brave to confront people or to say no, I don't want to do that, rather than just being nice and just doing it because you don't want to offend someone. I would say I've seen that difference in me. And also, yeah, I've just connected with my inner self of who I really am by looking at things like astrology and looking at your chart and seeing where you have strengths. Like when I read my chart and then I understand who I've become in this last like 10 years, for example, it resonates more with than who I was for 30 years. Because I wasn't being who I was just being what society wanted me to be, or what my mum and dad wanted me to be, or do you get what I'm saying? Just going with the script.
So you were saying you were actually like out of alignment with your astrology chart?
Yeah, of course I was, yeah, before I knew about it. Yeah, I didn't know nothing about it, and like, but it's just strange that the stuff that my chart tells me what I'm good at is what I'm doing now. You get what I'm saying? So like, I have a stellium in Sagittarius. So Sagittarius is about spirituality, philosophy, wisdom, higher knowledge, dreams, religion. And I've got also 3 planets in Scorpio. Scorpio's about the occult, diving deep. That's me. That's what I love doing. That's what I do. But I never used to do that before. I did do it, but in a more of a mundane way, meaning like I used to be quite into history when I was younger. They were the kind of things maybe I would dig deep into. But then, like, as I became older, I've aligned more with my internal self rather than my external self. And the thing is, as well, what I've come to notice now, it's not about being one or the other. It's trying to merge them and have the balance. Because again, that's another thing I'll only speak for myself, but like, even when we turn spiritual and we don't want to go within, then we start getting that vibe of, oh yeah, I'm not materialistic and I'm not this and I'm not that. But again, you can't neglect either of them. You have to kind of bridge the gap, so to speak. So I think that's another very important thing to tell people watching. It's like, yeah, it's all good to turn spiritual, it's brilliant, and to go within. But at the same time, we have to realize we live in the material world, so we can't neglect it totally. Which, again, I'm not saying I'm perfect at that, because I have issues with that problem, like the outside world and trying to get back into it. And because in my chart as well, I have very, very minor earth placements. So that tells me that I need to be more grounded. I'm too up in the sky with the way I think and being spiritual and philosophical and this and that. It's all good, but we have to try and balance all our elements out as well.
Yeah, man, there's so much stuff where you were talking there, and I was like, yeah, now I want to talk about this, now I want to talk about this. It's like all these different stuff, man. It's like where to begin. I was like kind of taking notes. This whole merging, kind of taking the middle path thing, is something that keeps kind of like popping up. The idea of like taking the middle path, and you know, the whole idea that like there's these separations that we're kind of existing in. Everyone is constantly being divided more and more and more. And it seems that like one of the things we were kind of discussing yesterday was, this is just an idea I got from a video I watched on Santos' channel a couple of days ago. There was a guy callld Ozymandias or Ozymandias or something like that. And he's basically saying that you're born with a collective of people all together to basically operate upon like the same map. And you can level yourself up, but until the whole collective moves up, then you don't ultimately actually level up to the higher dimension. You'll remain in the same dimension until you all move with it together, basically. And it's this whole thing of like, you know, if we're constantly separating ourselves off, then we're not going to achieve that. But at the same time, if we don't separate ourselves off, then it's like, where do we draw the line of acceptance? Where do we draw the line of like, you know, this, we cannot follow this because this is not right. It's like paradoxical, but
yeah, it's weird, isn't it, bro? Because like, what you're saying is, it's like, because we're the minority, what's the consciousness that is actually going together is a negative vibe. Is that what you're saying, basically? So like, you know how you're saying we all have to be on the same vibe to rise up or to go to a particular place? Well, what the way you explained it, it's like, what I see is like the inverse of, so for example, just say there's people like us, we like to delve deep, we're spiritual and we don't kind of go with the mainstream narrative. Well, we're the minority. So what I'm saying is, would that then mean that the society's consciousness, because that's more together, then that consciousness is what runs over the world, basically? Do you get what I mean? Is that what you're saying, basically?
Well, that makes sense to me as well. Like, it's like ultimately, like, if you're in a room full of everyone's in a bad mood and you're in a good mood, everyone's still going to say, well, there was bad vibes in that room.
Yeah.
So it's like what kind of gets like marked. I'm imagining it like a test paper now. It's like, well, I smashed out this one question. And it's like, yeah, you did one question, but the exam paper had like 30 questions on it, and you need to get marks on all of them, kind of thing. And yeah, but it still seems like this kind of paradoxical thing in my mind of like, like what is the perfect way? Because sometimes it seems like the most peaceful method is just lead by example. I'll go my own path, and that ultimately you end up kind of, that is kind of a road that you walk on your own for the most part.
Well, I would say what we're doing right now is an example of how we can do it. Is just meeting and talking to like-minded people, and then, for example, I knew you, Adriano, but I didn't know the other two brothers until today. So then now I've made an extra connection to people that are more like-minded to me. So then the more we kind of talk to like-minded people, then we can kind of grow our bubble or our web, so to speak, and we can just try and grow it that way. I mean, like, yeah, I've had this conversation, like, and like you say, it's such a like 50-50 thing, meaning like there's days I think, you know what, I can't help people. I'm just going to have to do what I'm going to do and just try and set a good example. And, I'm just going to have to do my own thing. And then there's other days where I feel like, no, I need to tell people, like, my friends need to know, my family needs to know this. But I can't just know this information and keep it to myself. So it's like you say, we have this battle whether which way to go. But ultimately, no matter which way you go, as long as you try to do it in a nice, peaceful, respectful way, then that's the key at the end of the day.
Another like kind of like it's almost like another paradox of it, but it's like because for me, I'm kind of one way to communicate it, and I'm not saying this is the whole truth of it, but one way to communicate that this whole getting the message out is like, you're fighting a fight. I'm fighting this fight, and I want us to win, essentially. And then it's like the whole mentality of like the warrior. When you're in that warrior mind state, it's like, I'm gonna go out and defeat my enemy. And then you go out, you defeat your enemy, but your enemy's friends, while you went out, come back round and attack the village. And so you get back like feeling like, yeah, I won. And then you get back and then you realize, oh fuck, like if I'd stayed put, I wouldn't have lost this, and I never wanted to lose this. And it's like, where, yeah, it's like an infinitely like delicate line that but the merging together is what ultimately I think sums it up.
Yeah, I mean, because
learning experience.
Sorry, what was that, brother?
A learning experience. You're gonna catch a lesson even out the hard knocks.
For sure.
It's all part of it. It's all written as part of like in our kind of souls.
I think that's what like we kind of hit on it yesterday, and I've spent a lot of time thinking about it yesterday. But the identity aspect of every individual as kind of that central point of being able to determine value, right? Because everything we do is based off value. We perceive a certain value in showing up to work, because we say, okay, if I show up to work, then The value is I'm going to receive currency in exchange. These are the kind of constructs that we set up, but again, they're based off of the identity. The identity is the one that's keeping score, because the identity is the one that is creating essentially the I, right? The I in the system. So anytime there's a reference to, well, I don't like working here, or I don't like doing this job, that's referring to the identity, but the identity is that that's what's keeping score. Ultimately, there is no, I don't feel like there is kind of that higher power essentially keeping score. I feel like that's totally based upon us, because it's a subjective thing, because right and wrong is even subjective.
Yep, for sure.
Could it be that inside us, we have like essentially a higher power and a lower power?
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah, pretty much. It's just like, yeah, we either have our higher self when we want to be good and want to be righteous and want to be, a bit more moral, and then we have our lower nature when we want to be greedy, we want to be lustful, we want to be hurtful, and where any one of us are capable of any of those things. I guess it just depends on what we want to give, who we want to give the attention to, the good or the so-called bad. That's all it really goes down to for me.
And as well, it's walking the line on that as well. Because say this is one which this is my personal philosophy, which I'm unraveling step by step. But some of my lower natures, although it's like I don't want them in control, I don't want them neglected. I want them to I imagine it like a dog, and you take the dog out to the park, you let it do its thing, and like when it's at the park, it's doing its thing basically. But when it's at home, it's not in charge. And so you've got to give it that chance to run around. It's going to shag other dogs. It's going to take a dump. It might, do you know what I mean? It's going to do whatever is that character of that dog. Like it might chase a squirrel and try and kill it. Do you know what I mean? That's the nature of the dog. And I would, when I take my dog to like a park, I want it to live its life. But yeah, so it's like this kind of thing of like every once in a while letting the lower nature do its thing. That's my personal philosophy.
Yeah, no, I hear that, man.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that more people have to like allow themselves like grace to do so, and have the compassion in doing so, because you did come down to this realm to essentially indulge in the material, that is what it's here for. But again, it goes back to kind of that moderation aspect, because anything on any extreme is not going to be pleasant, and that's just because we operate most optimally out of a baseline, and whatever that baseline is determined, again, it's subjective. But when we start to get on either of the extremes, I think that's when people have the most problems.
Yep, I agree. Totally.
Again, it comes back to the middle path. The middle path is the way. So he's a bit of this is one that I've been kind of running over in my mind. I've gone back and forth on it a couple of times now, basically. So recently I started eating eggs again.
Right.
And I'm in the whole unraveling now again, this whole path of spirituality. And on one side of it, I've got like kind of the teachings that are really what truly like reinstigated it for me more than anything else. Or if I go right back to the start, first it was Infinite Waters, YouTube, if you know Infinite Waters.
Yep.
He's diving deep. And then years later, Santos Bonacci talking about the veganism approach, or I guess vegetarian approach is in the right context, but for the sake of living in the Babylon system, it's going to be vegan most of the time. And but then one of my teachers, basically, he's done the full switch around, and now he's like eating steak and talking about how it's affecting his body in a certain way. And, you know, like just to give the brief kind of one, he was basically saying he was in like a low place where he was in a position where he was helping other people. So, and you just got a message like, eat the fish and you'll have the energy to do what you need to do. Basically eating the fish, getting the energy, helping people and turning it into like a ritual. So what's your take kind of on diet and the path that we walk as like spiritual beings? What's important, what's not?
At the end of the day, look, this is quite a touchy subject for many people. I've had so many discussions about this. Personally, I've been vegan since 1st of January 2016. I done it because of, for a few reasons I done it. Basically, I had my own, we had a dog, we had a pet, and obviously as years went on from the first pet, that was the first pet I had, I see that animals had such a characteristic, they're almost human-like. Obviously, they don't have the capacity to think like us, but they feel, they respond, like they're just beings. And I thought, wow, man, like we just eat these like for fun. And then also through when I was, just as I started my spiritual journey, I was watching Santos, funny enough, and he said something to the effect of, oh, if you eat animals, you'll be eaten by an animal. And while I was watching this video, I still was a meat eater. And then literally 2 weeks later, I got bitten by a dog. In a park, I was taking my dog got into a fight with another dog, tried to separate it. The other dog attacked me, bit me on my arm and bit me under my armpit. I had to go to hospital and whatnot and went through the whole thing. And as I'm going through this pain, I'm thinking about this video I've watched. And then, you know, I'm thinking about it, and like obviously this was like about 4 to 5 months before I actually did the switch. And then I thought about it. It was New Year's Day, and I thought, you know what, I don't want to do it anymore. And then, yeah, since then I've stopped eating meat. I was vegetarian maybe for like 3 months, and then I made the switch. I'm sure I've eaten stuff that's been cross-contaminated somewhere along the line. I know I've probably maybe, someone's said to me, I'll go and have one of these. And I say, oh, is there milk in it? For example, I know there ain't no meat in it. And they'll say, is there milk in it? I say, I don't know. So I've had one, maybe a biscuit or something. But if I know that something has milk in it or meat, I haven't eaten it. So, and since then, yeah, that's my personal choice. I choose not to eat animals or anything from animals. But at the end of the day, we're all on our own individual personal journey, and there's no judgment from me to others about what they put in their body. At the end of the day, it's your body, it's your life. You can do what you like. It don't necessarily mean I will agree with it, but this is another thing as well, that as humans, we always think that we have to agree on things where we don't. That's fine. Like, I don't agree with you, you don't agree with me, or whatever it is. No harm done. Like, you live your life, I live my life. And yeah, that's where I am at the moment. I mean, yeah, I've just been vegan ever since. And yeah, I just don't think that, I mean, in my eyes, I have an idea of what right and wrong is. But then again, like I said, we're all different. So I don't know what you think right and wrong is, or what someone else is. So we're all on our own journeys at the end of the day. Sorry, that was a bit of a mad mixture of a rant there.
No, I like it because I mean, ultimately you were saying the words in there of like, you know, I'm not passing any judgment from myself. It's your body, it's your choice, which ultimately comes back to this whole thing of like, yeah, we can we can not agree with each other. That's fine, but there's divisions going on right now. There is a touchy subject, and that's kind of why I wanted to address it, basically, is because
Right.
like it's the merging once more. It's like the middle path, and that middle path is unique to each individual, kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so it's all tailored, basically. Everyone's got their own tailored kind of, there is no, the spiritual path is basically, it can't be defined down to one.
Yeah, because the way I see it as well, look, we all, if I didn't watch that video or didn't turn spiritual or whatever, or started looking into what I was looking into, then I wouldn't have been vegan. It's only because of events that led, do you get what I'm saying? So it's just, I understand now that, or I've got to that stage or whatever, but other people haven't. They're just they're taking a different road, and that's just the way it is. It's just like with me, you know what I've come to understand, or what I try to be a stronger person. Sometimes you got to accept what you don't like. It's just tough shit. Sorry to excuse my language. It's like it's not always going to go your way. So you've just got to try and be strong and say, look, all right, I don't agree with it. Or like for example, like my parents, they do so many things that I don't agree with. And I've had so many arguments and things over it about them, but it just, like, it didn't even, nothing even happened out of it. So the way I see it now is, you know, I'll just do me, I'll let them do them, and I'll just try and keep a nice rapport with them rather than just being at odds with each other, because there's no point, basically. It's not getting anywhere, so there's no point in having a battle, whereas they know where I stand, I know where they stand, and we respect each other's view that way. Do you get what I mean?
It's the alchemy. It's the alchemy that we create.
Do you feel that we choose our parents?
You know what? This is a really, because I've seen like when I've watched stuff about reincarnation and stuff, they say that in the life it's always a role reversal. So in the past life we were their parents, and now in this life, I've heard that. But again, you know what? I'm a very open-minded person. It may well be the case, but in terms of me being able to prove that, there's no way of me proving it. But at the same time, who knows? It could well be a possibility, maybe, which is why we have these struggles with our parents, because it's like a bit of an inside-out reversal thing. Like, that makes sense to me, but who knows? Like, I'm open to that idea. You never know, man.
One that I'm kind of juggling with in my head is like, it's the thing of reincarnation. Do we reincarnate in the way that they tell us that is basically like you're essentially going to be, and have already been reborn into a life like this life. So you're born into basically like a body made of meat. You're human, you've got 2 eyes or whatever, you're born somewhere. Or is it that, because on the book that I'm reading right now, Light of Egypt, the one that Santos shouts out, it basically says that is not how it works, and that you reincarnate through different kind of levels of consciousness. So basically your first level is essentially like being a rock. You're a rock, and then the next level you're a plant, then you're an animal, then you're a human. Big checkpoint. Now you're a human. This is where everything that you've learned so far is gonna get tested or something like that. And it's almost like being human is like the fork in the road. Everything up until the point beforehand is very much like prepping the materials, is my way of seeing it. But so like, do you believe in reincarnation or?
I mean, again, like I was saying to the other brother, there's no way of me proving it. But if reincarnation is true, another way I'd see it as well is like, for example, I see it in, you know, like for example, like I was just talking about my parents and they think a particular way and I think a particular way, for example. It could be the fact that although they're older than me in the real world, that it could be the fact that maybe we've been here more times, hence we can see through the other stuff that they can't see. Hence we're on again, a different platform or a different level to them. Not to say that we're better than them, but it's just to say that, oh, we've already seen that. So because we've already seen that, we can see past it and we're trying to move to our next level, whereas they're still on that level. Like, so it's kind of maybe we've been here more times than they have. So I've kind of thought of that concept in my mind before, but again, I don't know how it's something, it's a bit of a mind-boggling thing to even think about, if that makes sense. It's almost not comprehensible, if that makes sense.
It kind of gets me sometimes. I'm feeling like reflecting on some of the stuff that I've done or said to my parents, because man, my parents have done so much for me, and I'm not gonna lie, some of the times I'm just a fucking, do you know what I mean? I'm just an oversensitive, like huffing and puffing like a bloody pissed off hairdresser, do you know what I mean? So like I'm reflecting on it and I'm just thinking, you know what, like all this stuff that I've gone in oversensitive because I want them to go down this path, or I want them to leave that behind, etc. Ultimately, it's this thing of like, I want to be a parent for my parents. I want to switch that kind of reverse role, but the way that I'm playing it is I end up just like, do you know what I mean, huffing and puffing, which is more the role of like a kind of like an immature child really, or like you know, an ungrateful son basically. Whereas like when you're in a parent, being a parent is more like, even if you see your kid pissing about, you're kind of breaking it down, decoding it, figuring out where the behavior come from, how you can redirect it somewhere else that's more positive. And it's like you always have to kind of take certain things on the chin to be able to really, like, you know, walk that path of like transcending the role of being like a son, and then being like a parent for your parents, kind of thing.
Yeah, man, it's difficult, man. It's just, you know what's quite sad about the conflicts we have with our loved ones or our parents or whatever, like most of the time both parties only want what's best for the other, but it's just because we view the world in a different way. What they think is best and what we think is best is that polar opposite thing. Do you get what I'm saying? And that's where the clash happens. But ultimately, I think the intention of both parties is pure. And like for example, when my parents will say something to me, obviously they're not saying it to annoy me or piss me off. They're only probably doing it because what they truly believe that what they're trying to tell you is what's best for you. But because we know different from knowing knowledge of particular things, we get wound up because we know it a different way, and it doesn't merge together. And I think that's where the problem is. Whereas if both parties sat back and thought like we probably just, well, we both want the best for each other, but it's just our ways of what's the best thing just clashes, and that's where the problem is. Do you get what I mean?
It's like water and oil. Whereas the thing is, we don't want it to be water or oil. We want it to be mixed together, put some salt, put some flour, put it in the oven, and then you've got a pastry or a cake or whatever it is. But it's the merging.
Yeah.
You know, part of what I think it is also is the level of complexity in the level of variables, because it's just like earlier generations, if you think about it from a computing standpoint, there was essentially less variables to compute. You know, there was less things to worry about. But it's like nowadays, because everything has become so layered and convoluted and middlemen and all these, you know, roundabout kind of entities, it becomes a lot harder to make a simple decision.
Yeah,
And I think that's something that is kind of hard to articulate, because you're almost talking about a difference of hardware, so it's you can fundamentally program the same beliefs, but if the hardware can't support it, if it's not a good user experience, it's not, the user's not going to prefer that. They're going to prefer the thing that gives them the best user experience, i.e. the best quality of life.
that is a great analogy, brother. Perfect analogy. I don't think anyone could have explained it any better. I totally agree with you.
This whenever you like this thing of like the added complexity, to me, like it sends my mind down a road that ultimately it gets me thinking that like almost like technology is the way forward, because like I start thinking that, do you ever hear the Terence McKenna idea that basically the universe runs on novelty, the universe runs on new things, and that basically history is just like an incrementing wave of novelty? More new things are happening, less new things are happening, and that gradually, as you built up towards 2012, the end of the Mayan calendar, it was going to reach this climax of novelty. And he said he didn't know what was going to happen at that point, but it was like at that point there'd be so much new stuff that like almost the old world would be gone, and it would just end. There'd be something that's the whole end of the world thing. And like it makes me think like, I don't know if like what the path ahead in this ever complex world really is like.
I think it's just the pendulum swinging, honestly. It's moving from polarity to polarity, what we would call good, bad, evil, good, positive, negative. It over time you see the swinging of this pendulum, and that, I think that's just what is occurring. People are more aware of the process now, more so than ever, but the process has been occurring. We've been in this infinite feedback loop. But again, people are just starting to come and become aware that we're in this feedback loop.
Yeah, that's very well put, brother. You're saying like the pendulum swing.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting, because Adrian will know that the guy we watch, or that we've learned of, Santos, he talks about the sine wave. And that's ultimately what the pendulum is. It's the sine wave going up and down. And I think the key is, once we know how that pendulum reacts, knowing different parts of the pendulum, then we can be more at one with it, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
And I think that is the problem with us as a whole, as a society. We don't understand the pendulum. Mm-hmm. So that's why we're not going with it, if that makes sense. It's like a bit all over the place. But ultimately, like what the brother was talking about was the sine wave, and going from spring and summer, which is deemed positive, and then you've got fall and winter, which is seemed as negative, and then we just constantly go through this cycle every year. And then obviously there's bigger versions of that cycle, which would be like the great year or the ages. And so I totally agree with what the brother said, for sure.
So it's gonna wind back down, basically. It's never gonna wind down to a point where it stops, or gear up to a point where it just compresses in and just so much. Like,
yeah,
you feel like it's always going to be in balance.
Yeah, man. I guess that's, yeah. I mean, the only thing we really have to kind of, like we have these questions and then we ask, oh, what's this? The only thing we really have as an answer is life itself, because that's all we can comprehend. So we could just have to look at life and how life is and how things are, and then try and use that as a kind of a foundation or a base to kind of understand where we are. Because that pendulum swing is, we see another shorter cycle of that, which is within the day. Mm-hmm. You have 6 hours of night and then 6 hours of day. So that's another more a fractal of the year pendulum. you get what I'm saying? So then the day we see that constant pendulum just from night and day. So yeah, and it's just understanding how that pendulum works, which will maybe help us accept and deal with it, if that makes sense. Because like, I think that's a lot of the things that why people get stressed out or we get into depression is because we're not understanding what's going on.
Mm-hmm. And see, I think even part of that is kind of society has kind of cultivated this unrealistic tempo. You know, it's this metronome that is ticking so fast at such a high BPM that it seems unrealistic to keep up with. You know, and so this is where people are kind of essentially killing themselves to keep up with this unrealistic tempo set forth by society instead of listening to them, you know, their self and honoring their journey and honoring that sacred timeline that is completely unique to the individual. You know, just because as soon as you get into the game of comparison, you've lost. You know, you instantly lose because there is no winning in the game of comparison.
For sure. It goes back to like going back to astrology slightly, it goes back to knowing your own birth chart. So whatever your rising sign is in your chart, that will be your spring, your own personal spring. So me being a Leo rising, my personal springtime starts in Leo. So maybe by me knowing that, I can know, right, in the time of Leo is a good time for me to kick something off. Whereas someone else's might be Sagittarius or Libra or whatever it is. So knowing your own map and your own blueprint, you can work around that to know when to start a project or when not to start a project. Whereas most of us, we don't know this. We'll try something, we'll think, oh, it didn't work. But maybe it's because you're not, again, we're not in tune with that pendulum. So we've like jumped onto it at the wrong part, basically. So it's just knowing all these minor, not minor, or knowing a bit more of the intricacies of who we are, which may help us achieve what we actually want to achieve rather than doing it blindly without knowing particular stuff is maybe where we're going wrong as a whole, if that makes sense, or an individually.
That's interesting, man. Thinking about
because obviously we know, like Adriano, that's Aries is spring, is the first sign, right? So whatever sign is in your first house will be your spring. So then knowing what rising you are can help you kind of think, okay, this is a fresh start for me. Let me catch this wave and go with this wave.
Would you link it into the day as well? Like, would it be like, say, for example, if you took Aries, it's like 6 a.m.
Yeah.
Your rising is Aries. That's to do your project.
Yeah. Well, what you're saying is, can you use that? Yeah, of course you can do that of course, because we do that naturally anyway without us knowing about that. It's like we get up that time, bang, because that's when the sun rises, is when you get up. So we get up that time and then we follow each sign, like Santos says, like you get up, bang, Aries in your head because you wake up in your head. Once you get up, the next sign is Taurus. So you have some breakfast, have something to eat. And then you go to work. Gemini, the next sign, your two hands. And then after that, after work, you have your lunch break, which is Cancer, at the Tropic of Cancer, 12 o'clock noon. Cancer is the upper digestive system. So then and that rules from 12 to 2. Sorry, I forgot to say the hour. So Aries would be from 6 to 8 in the morning, Taurus 8 to 10, Gemini 10 to 12, Cancer 12 till 2. And then after the lunch break, Leo, fire, bang, 2 to 4, you get back to work again. And then you have Virgo from 4 to 6. Virgo is the analytical Mercury, where you do all your paperwork at the end of the day. And then you come to Libra, go home with your partner, balance things out. Scorpio, you make love. Sagittarius, you go to sleep and have them deep dreams. And then the cycle of the day is kind of, obviously that will depend on what, because someone might say, no, but I work during the night. It don't work for me, obviously. But we're just using that as a general template. So for sure, bro, like the day, you can do that. You can use the day cycle to manifest those type of things, I guess.
One of the ones I'm interested in, all of these like little intricacies of like how you can use astrology like to like basically in the day-to-day and use it. But also one that keeps bringing to my mind is like the actual time in the day that you were born.
Right.
But for me, I'm born at 4:43 a.m.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that means that I should be waking up at 4:43 a.m. because that just seems like I don't want to do that, basically.
Not necessarily, because I would say because your rising sign is to do with waking up, I guess.
Okay.
So then maybe you wouldn't necessarily use your sun sign. I don't know, but what I would say is that I noticed that, like, see, I was born at 8:30 at night, for example. I love that time of the day. So maybe what I think is the time that you was born is the time of the day that you like or you feel comfortable in. I don't know. Do you like that time of the day? 4 o'clock, 4:30?
4:30 a.m.
Oh, 4:30 a.m. you was born.
A.m. bro.
Oh, right.
So that's the thing is like I've got up at like that time, like
I thought you meant 4:30 in the afternoon. Sorry, bro.
Those 4:30 a.m.s, it was weird. It was like living in a weird. I had to basically, because of lockdown, that was the first time I had to experience it regularly, because I was like, let me just go back to London and commute to this school over in bloody like near Stonehenge. So I was basically getting up in the morning and going to Stonehenge and coming back and just doing it like once or twice a week, because it was like full on lockdown.
Yeah.
And yeah, like living in that time, I was kind of aware of like, you know, just the idea of like waking up before dawn and stuff like that. And,
yeah.
It was quite surreal for me.
But how did it make you feel?
Tired, but I have to admit it was in the mix of everything. Like I was going in and I was basically my group of kids for this particular lockdown, when the schools were actually closed, it was just the key worker kids coming in, was the like 11 to 12 year olds, like the youngest ones at the secondary school. And I was basically going in and just seeing a whole room of kids like plugged in like office workers, doing work that the kids at home weren't doing. And this was basically like majority of them was like, it was a weird mix. It's like the naughtiest kids, the most hard to handle kids. They were the ones that were basically locked in school doing the office work, unless they were so naughty that they just completely like, do you know what I mean? You could just see them outside of the school. They haven't quite, but that for the younger ones, they were in school. It was the older ones who are more likely to skip. Either way, it was quite a weird experience. So I guess there's other stuff going on, probably.
Yeah. Yeah, because like for example, my brother, he's born at 3:15 a.m. in the night, and he says he loves that time of the day. He loves the night time. But again, I guess that depends on, I don't know, like, yeah, I prefer the nighttime more than the daytime as well. And all my planets are in the bottom half of my chart as well. They're all, literally, I have one planet on the top half, and that's my moon in Taurus. But the rest of mine are all below the horizon in my chart. So I don't know, like, I find the daytime sometimes a bit, should I tell you, the only time I like the day is when I'm abroad in a different country. I like daytime then when I've been in Cyprus or I've been in Amsterdam or Istanbul or whatever. But when you're where you live, to me, I prefer the nighttime. But yeah, we're all different at the end of the day.
There's definitely been times when I was younger and I used to go to the raves, and it's like it's that point of like I'm in an endless, timeless space. And I was probably at 4:43 a.m. It's probably at 4:43 a.m. Just taking the guess.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's just with astrology, it's just again, although you can break, it's like what we've just been like discussing. You can break it down to a daily cycle, you can break it down to a yearly cycle, and make fractal versions of it. But it's just the way I understand, the way I would tell people what astrology is. It's like natural psychology. It's knowing that in different 30-degree sections of the year, there will be different vibes and that makes sense to me because obviously we can see that and feel that through the seasons because of different feelings and different vibes and different temperatures. And do you get what I'm saying? So there's obviously a change throughout the year. So it would make sense that if you enter this world while a particular frequency is like that the sun and the earth create, and then you come into the earth within that frequency, it only makes sense that that kind of frequency will imprint on you, because ultimately it's like everything's sound, even though like the rays, like the sun rays, we can't hear them, but it's sound. Do you get what I'm saying? So that sound is penetrating you when you enter the world. So yeah, it's like cymatics. Like, have you seen that? Have you ever watched them videos where they put like salt on the table and then they change the frequency and the pattern changes? So it means that different sounds create different energies. So like like people say, oh, it's just all hocus pocus, but it's not. You can add science to it and use examples of how astrology is scientific.
I feel like the best way is to do the astrology reading for someone. So I feel like, Stoney, do you remember what time you were born?
We were getting to that when we were talking to my mom. We got down to like 11.
Yeah, it was 11, wasn't it? Do you remember AM or PM? It was PM.
Yeah.
Bro, wait, is the sound cut out? Stoney, can I still hear you?
Yeah, his sound's gone off.
That's so mad. Like, how has the universe done that? Can't hear you. Oh no, there you go. I hear you a little bit.
Has he got a mic on his headphones? It might be the mic.
Yeah, maybe.
I have on
There we go.
AirPods.
We're back.
Oh,
No, it's Stoney again. It was definitely PM. All right. Stoney, your microphone, I think you need to give it another wobble. And hopefully it's going to come back. Nice.
1, 2.
Oh, yeah. Oh.
He's going to come back in, yeah.
Yeah.
He might come back in, it might work.
All right. I think we should load up. If you're down.
Yeah.
What, you want me to look at a chart?
Would you be down
to?
Yeah,
whatever. We can look at it. Why not?
We can do like a brief.
Yeah, man. No problem, man. It's all good.
Let me find.
Yeah, I've been doing some readings for people as well. I'm getting there slowly.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Building up a few extra things on top of the Syncretism Society stuff I'm doing. So yeah, man, slowly just trying to build up a little.
Are you familiar with the human design?
Do you know what, brother? That's so interesting you mentioned that. Because the first podcast I ever did with someone was about human design and gene keys.
Wow. Okay.
And I'm aware of it very briefly, like you have a projector and a manifestar, but to be honest, I researched it such a long time ago, I would have to refresh my memory on it. So it's not something I've kind of pursued, but I have looked into it.
Nice. Yeah, I was just curious because it was something that I kind of also have been recently just looking into more of, and definitely, so my type would be considered a projector, and I definitely resonate with a lot of the aspects of it, and I especially feel because the whole kind of concept with projectors is the invitation piece. So essentially, they need to be invited into an opportunity. And this is kind of how there's equal recognizing of value, and it's able to be reciprocated in a right way. Otherwise, if not, if there's an acceptance of like the wrong invitations, then this can kind of lead to like burnout and kind of over being utilized, things like that. So it's kind of finding that balance between that. But I've been very curious on kind of looking at integrating those components with the astrology and kind of
Yeah,
creating this kind of hybrid system of sorts and
I
kind of
think there
understanding.
actually is a system, because I remember when my friend Tanya, she did my stuff on human design and stuff, and I remember it had some astrological stuff in it as well. But like I said, this was like probably like 5 years ago when I looked into it, so I haven't really pursued it. It's like, it's weird. I've looked into so many things, but I guess certain things we gravitate to more. Like, for example, many people who like astrology are really into tarot, but I'm not. I know about tarot, and I know more about like the esoteric stuff of it. Like, for example, the 22 major arcana reflect the 22 letters in the Hebrew alphabet, for example. I'm quite into a lot of occult stuff as well, so I know a lot about that and the meanings. But in terms of each card and which sign it represents and stuff, so I'm not too up to date with that. So it's like, I find that as well with me, it's like certain things attract me more than others.
Absolutely.
I quite like that part of the astrology, that it does match up with those tarot cards. But I guess ultimately they're just playing with it's creation, and I think with the tarot cards it's very much creation, because where the astrology is more just you're simply reading something that's been written by the universe. Tarot cards it has been written by the universe, but it's also the fact that you're physically playing with it, so it kind of becomes a creation method as well. I think that's my philosophy towards it.
Yeah, I understand where you're coming from with that as well. Yeah, maybe, I guess that's what's like, because even me, like when I do readings for people, I don't say, oh, like this is going to happen to you, and then I don't like that side of it. It's not. I'm not doing it to predict things. I want to do it to help people. To say, look, man, you got energy in this thing. Maybe you should like try working on a project in relation to this, or your emotions are squaring with your sun, so your emotion and your expression are at odds with each other. So then maybe you can do this to like. I like using astrology in that way rather than just to say, oh, in 3 months' time you're going to lose your job, and then this is going. That's not my type of astrology that I'm into.
Stoney, is your microphone working, bro?
No,
can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Can you hear me? You can hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, word, yeah.
Come on. Back in the building. Yeah, I think we should
run there for a second.
Technology, man.
Yeah. So are you going to find out the brother's time, or?
Yeah, if we don't have Stonies, I have mine.
Let's run it. I kind of want to do. I don't mind really.
I don't mind. It's up to you, man. Just bring up a chart and we can have a look at it, man. Whoever it is, I don't even like. Yeah, whatever.
I like Astro Cafe.
No worries, man.
So I kind of want to do Stoney's one, because I feel like Darian you already know a lot about astrology. So it's like you already know your chart. So that's why it's like Stony, I feel like it's more
Yeah,
of
it's
like
just gonna be hard without the imprecise time because it's like you can be given. But I mean, you can give basic observations, I guess.
true,
Yeah.
you're
Does,
right.
does the brother not know his time then?
Or, I mean, I asked my mom and she gave me a roundabout way. She said she was out of it.
All right.
I-
What
I would
time
have
did
to
she
look
say?
at my birth certificate. 11
At night or
It was-
daytime?
in the evening. She said
Okay.
she went in during like the noon time and she was there for days.
Right. It's up to you, Adriano, man. I don't mind that if you like. We can still do a reading without a specific time, but like the brother said, it won't be so accurate without the time.
Yeah, you're right. This is like I have to make a decision here. I mean, let's go with an exact one for now, and then I feel like we'll jump into Stoney's one as well because I'm intrigued. And I did a part 1 as well, and I didn't really do too well. I was hoping that you do you know what I mean? Kind of like
What was that?
I did a part 1 for Stoney basically. I did
Right.
an astrology reading, and my knowledge is not actually really there, but I did my best in the moment. But either way, let's run a. So Darian, let's go. When were you born?
So 30 April
Nice.
1993. And then 10:28 a.m.
Nice. Oh,
So yeah, 10th
Oh.
or 11th house, sun.
And then birthplace is Corpus Christi, Texas.
My birth certificate in a while. Is that time on there?
I don't know.
Yeah.
In England, not. In England, they don't unless you're a twin. Should we go to get to the wheel? Whoo, that's a matcha.
Right. So your Cancer rising, Mars in Leo. Interesting. What else we've got? Is that Moon in Leo as well? Yeah.
Yes, Moon and Leo.
Yeah, Moon in Leo. Wow. So you got very, very strong Leo energy. I'm a Leo rising as well, so I have Leo. What else have we got? So second, no, is that the brother? Would you mind doing it on AstroSeek? Because I can't really. This
It's kind of hard to see the
yeah,
house.
it's a bit.
Yes. Let me get that. See, this just goes to show my level of astrology.
No, it's nothing to do with that. It's just the way that the visual is. It's not very clear.
Astrology charts.
You just go to free horror. Oh yeah, you can do that as well. Yeah. 30th of April.
'93.
93. Slow. So, you know, one of those ones, I've got a mouse down. Using my mouse. So 10:28.
Correct.
My brain. Corpus Christi. All of this is like sounding like a Corpus Christi, born in the body of the Christ.
Bro, can you click the agree thing so it goes out the way?
Yeah. Get out of the way.
There we go. So, yeah, it's good. It's a good chart, man. You know what I like about it straight away?
What's that?
You've got planets like literally around the whole wheel, which
Yeah.
I really like when I look at charts, because then that means that you're a well-rounded person in all areas of life. Whereas with me, mine are just all stuck in the 3rd, 4th, and 5th house right at the bottom. So they're really condensed. Whereas your one, I love it. You've got one in the 3rd, you've got Mars in the 2nd, Moon in 3rd, Jupiter in 4th, Pluto in 5th. You've got your South Node in the 6th, Uranus and Neptune 7th. That's what I'm saying. You've pretty much got a planet in every single house. So straight away, I like that when I look at a chart, because then it shows me that a person's quite well-rounded in many different areas of life. So yeah, so you've got let's see, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 compared to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, slightly more on the top than the bottom, but generally it's quite balanced. So they say that if you have more planets above the horizon, that you're an extroverted person, and they say, obviously, like, I think I've mentioned that before, but yeah, so Ascendant Cancer, which would tell us that you're very nurturing. You have a very nurturing personality, very motherly, very, yeah, because Cancer is ruled by the moon. So as a personality and outward appearance, you're very Cancerian. Mars in Leo, obviously. See, the thing is with a reading, you can do it like in 2 ways, or I kind of mix it together. You can do it by, because obviously each sign is a part of the body as well. So you can look at it either medically. So that's another thing I'll just tell people watching as well. So wherever you have planets in a particular sign, that means you also have energy concentrated in that particular part of the body as well. So like, for example, like I can use for myself, I have a Sagittarius stellium, and I do have really big thighs. It's not a mistake. Like, do you get what I mean? And so knowing this side of astrology as well, you can get to know it more of not just in a from a mental level, but from a physical level as well. So yeah, Mars in Leo, just yeah, that tells me you're quite, yeah, you're very hearty, very passionate. Also with your moon in Leo as well, like, tells me that you're very expressive. You like to express your emotions. You're not someone who's shy of expressing their emotions, because obviously, if, like, for example, if the moon was in Capricorn or Aquarius, where Saturn rules, the energy of Saturn's restrictive. So then those people, for example, who have a moon in Capricorn or Aquarius, to some people might think, oh, he's a bit cold, or he's a bit restrictive, but that's just, there's no right and wrong really. It's just that the way where their moon felt. So yeah, I see a very passionate, a very hearty, very expressive person from how, oh, you got Chiron there as well. Yeah, it's interesting. And you've got, yeah, so your Mars is in the 2nd house, which is, do you want me to go through the house? I know you guys know. Do you want me to go through the houses, like, for the audience, just to let them know what each one is? Or should I just do it as I go along?
Do it as, I think, maybe both. Maybe both.
Okay, so let me just explain to the people how the chart works and then I'll get back to looking at the brother's chart. So obviously, this whole wheel is turning clockwise constantly. So the line, you can't see my mouse, can you?
Oh.
Okay,
I'm moving the mouse thinking I'm sorry, I'm yeah. So yeah, that's what, if you can do it for me, Adriano, yeah. So where Adriano's got his cursor, that line right there distinguishes the daytime or from the nighttime. So above that line would be considered daytime, and below that line would be considered nighttime. So obviously the whole wheel is turning clockwise, going around every single day. So for example, if brother, sorry, what's your name again, brother? Excuse me, whose chart we're looking at?
Darian.
Garian, did you say?
Darian with a D.
Oh, Darian. So if brother Darian was born 2 hours later, for example, his sun, go to the sun, Adriano. There, yeah. So his sun would be where the MC is, for example. It would have moved because the whole clock is shifting, literally. So whatever time you're born depends on which house your sun was. So Darian's sun is in the 11th house, which is the house of friendships and the house of the social life and clubs and stuff like that. So that shows me he's a person that will have a lot of associates and a lot of friends by his sun being in the 11th house. So so each house, let's go through each house. So number one, house one is I am. So that is who you are. That would be your outward personality and your body and how you look. House two is I have. So that is about your money, your material possessions and what you value. So house three would be I think. So that's about your communication, your learning, your siblings. It's also to do with short journeys. House four is I feel. So house four is about your home life, your heritage, your roots. Because the number 4 is the box, and the box is a symbol of a house also. So you can also find out the meanings of each house by knowing what the number represents as well, by connecting it to the number. So house 5 is the motto is of house 5 is sometimes it's referred to as I will, and then in other instances is I create. So it's about expression, creativity, artistry, romance, children. House 5 is I call that the house of fun and games. That's like, because I know I've got a lot of energies in that house. So yeah, so house 6 is about service to others and your health. House 7 is about partnerships and justice and the law. House 8 is about death, transformation. It's also about sex. House 9 is about spirituality, religion, philosophy, higher wisdom, dreams. House 10 is your public life and your career. It's also to do with like politics and stuff like that. House 11, which I already mentioned, is to do with your friends and your clubs and your social circles. And house 12 is to do, you could say, with karma or self-undoing. They would be the two things that I would associate with that house. So knowing what each house is, so if you've got planets in a particular house, that means you will have energy in relation to that area of life. So for example, brother Darian, like I said, he's got quite a well-rounded chart. So he's got Aries in his 10th house, and he's got the planets of Venus and Mercury in there. So that tells me that in the public arena, Darian has functions in the public arena with an Aryan mind state, because his Aries is in the 10th house. The way I usually explain it to people is the planet is what you're doing. The sign that the planet is in is how you do it. And then the house is where you're doing it. They're kind of the three things that I try and break down simply when I'm teaching people how to kind of analyze the chart. So you can look at the planets as like different personalities within you. There's actually a chart where you have a chart, but each planet has its own individual chart, which breaks down your person. It's called a persona chart. I don't know if anyone's ever looked into that. It's called the 9 personas chart. So for example, your moon, so in this case, Darian's moon is a Leo moon. But you can then go into that moon, and that moon will have its own chart. So it's like a personality within you. So you that's what I'm saying. With astrology, you can go like really deep.
That's so mad.
Yeah. So for example, I'm a Taurus moon, but my Taurus moon is a Leo moon. If that, I'd have to. It's a bit sounds a bit confusing to note for someone who hasn't looked into it. But once you look into it, it's very interesting. But yeah, so I'd say like I kind of give the planets are kind of different personalities within us, and the signs are how we the signs help us with those personalities. So for example, you having a Taurus sun would mean that you express yourself in a Taurian manner. So you having for example, a Leo moon would indicate that your emotions and the way you react and your internal self, you do that with a Leo mind state. So that's like the simple way that I like to teach astrology. It's kind of like, I always say it's like spiritual mathematics. It's like adding one thing and the next thing, and then like, hence the word that you've been using, Adriano, it's like a merge of these energies, and then they create a unique energy for each one of us. So yeah, Saturn in Aquarius, that's a good placement. Saturn rules in Aquarius, so that's a good placement to have. What else have we got? Jupiter in Libra in the 4th house. Again, that kind of matches with your 1st house, because although it's squaring, although you're the 4th house and the 1st house square, but it kind of, because it's interesting because Jupiter, the planet Jupiter, exalts in the sign of Cancer, and the 4th house is the house of Cancer. So it being in the 4th house is a really strong placement, because Jupiter is comfortable in that position because it exalts in Cancer, and Cancer is the 4th sign. So by it being in the 4th house, to me, shows a good placement. So it shows again a very, very homely, very nurturing, someone who likes family. That's what that Jupiter, because they say wherever you have Jupiter in your chart is what you'll be abundant in, or wherever Jupiter is in your chart, that's what comes easy to you. So like for me, Jupiter is in Sagittarius. So hence, like I've mentioned before, Sagittarius is more about philosophy, wisdom, religion, spirituality. So that's what I like and what comes easy to me. Whereas Brother Darian's is in the 4th house, but it's in the sign of Libra. So it shows me that Darian within the home, he's very balanced and fair and just. He likes to be in the middle, by his Jupiter being in Libra, because Libra is about partnerships and balance and justice. So from me looking at that, I see a very just person. What else have we got? We got Pluto in Scorpio. It's another great placement. I have that placement as well, because obviously Pluto rules in Scorpio. So again, another thing as well, guys, is knowing Like each planet does well in a particular sign and doesn't do so well in other signs. So again, knowing where a sign is at home or where it's exalted, and knowing where it falls and or where it's detrimented, all makes a difference in understanding the chart. So, like for example, Darion has Venus in Aries. Well, Venus is fallen in Aries because Venus rules opposite in Libra. So that placement would be considered like a detriment. But what I always say to people is that wherever we have detriments in our chart, I always think that that's where we're going to actually achieve something and learn something by having a difficult time with it, if that makes sense. In the end, it's something we're going to kind of conquer. That's the way I look at it. It's like with me, sorry, I keep going back to me because I don't mean to be like saying that in an egotistical way. I'm just using my chart as an example. Not like, you know, I was talking about earlier about me standing up to people and I've had to try and become a bit more braver and stuff like that. Well, in my chart, I have Mars in Libra. And Mars in Libra doesn't do well because, again, Mars rules in Aries. So that shows me that I'm not a very confrontational person. So then that's something that I've had to work on in my life. So just because we have bad placements, it doesn't mean, oh, it's bad and whatever. It's just something we can use to kind of work towards, basically. But yeah, what else do we have? Uranus in the 7th house, which is interesting, which tells me that in your partnerships, you're the person who is coming with the new ideas or thinks outside the box, or doesn't go with the general, like, because Uranus is about rebellion. Because if you understand like the levels in astrology, for example, you have the moon, Mercury, Venus, Sun, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, and then after Saturn is the firmament where the actual stars are, the ecliptic. Well, that's where Uranus comes into it. Uranus corresponds with the firmament because in ancient Greek, Uranus means the heavens. So that's why Uranus thinks outside the box, because Uranus is beyond the 7 physical planets that we can see with our eye. So that's why the energy of Uranus corresponds with new ideas and thinking outside of the box and being a revolutionary. So because obviously that's in your 7th house, and 7th house is to do with partnerships and relationships, that tells me that that's when it comes to your partnerships and relationships, you'll be the one bringing new ideas and thinking outside of the box. And the way you do that, obviously, is with Capricorn being there, is with the mind state of a Capricorn. And Capricorn is about building. Because even in the esoteric, the occult sciences, Capricorn is the sign of the Mason, it's the builder. Because the mountain goat of Capricorn symbolizes climbing. So it's about building. And because Capricorn is the foundation as well, at the Tropic of Capricorn at the bottom, it's about building a foundation, basically. So yeah, so it's quite an interesting like dichotomy actually, because Capricorn is an earth sign which is very grounded, but Uranus is a very heavenly kind of a very celestial energy. So that's an interesting connection there. It's like there are odds with each other, but at the same time, it doesn't matter. I guess you use it in your own unique way. Do you get what I mean? So yeah, I mean, Uranus isn't fallen in Capricorn, so I don't see it as a bad placement personally.
Mm.
Um,
He's got so much knowledge.
sorry.
You got the knowledge, man.
Well, not. I'm still learning myself, brother, man. You can never stop learning. At the end of the day, like the way I see myself as an astrology teacher, I like to just teach the basics to people, like make it easy rather than if you go too deep, then it's like you start losing people. It's just like that's why I kind of like to do it in bullet points, if that makes sense. So it's just like Saturn means this and it's in this house. It's almost like just trying to make it easy rather than. I like to add my own occult little like things into it because it helps you understand the energy of the planet. So yeah, I mean, everyone's got their own method at the end of the day. But yeah, so Saturn, you have Saturn in Aquarius, which is a really good placement because, like I said before, Saturn rules. The ruler of Aquarius is Saturn in classical astrology, because in modern astrology you have Uranus to add to that as well. But in the classical astrology, if you just, because that's another thing as well, some people just use the 7 planets we can see. Some people don't like to use Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. They just use the 7 that we can see with our physical eye. So that's why some people don't realize that Saturn also rules Aquarius. Some people say, oh, it's Uranus, and then Saturn rules Capricorn. But Capricorn's got 2 rulerships. So it's got Saturn has 2 rulerships, excuse me, which is Capricorn and Aquarius. So that's good there, it being in its home. Yeah, you have, so what have you got? So what house is that in? The 9th house. So Saturn, to me, when I think of the energy of Saturn, Saturn is cold and restrictive, and it's also about boundaries and learning lessons and understanding. So maybe what this shows by Darian having Saturn in the 9th house is that he will learn many lessons, or he will come to many understandings through looking at spirituality and the religious side and philosophical side of things. So that's where you will learn. Wherever Saturn is in your chart is where you have to like learn a lesson, for example. So your one is in the 9th house, which is the house of traveling, and again, spirituality, long journeys. It's also to do with dreams. So that's good placement, having Saturn in Aquarius, because Saturn rules there. The house it's in, I mean, I don't see a problem with it, like, because Saturn is fallen in the 10th and the 5th and the 4th house. That's where, so if you've got Saturn in 4 or 5, it would not be so good, because obviously 4 and 5 is Cancer and Leo, which opposes Capricorn and Aquarius, which is ruled by Saturn. So if you had Saturn in those, see, I've got a bad Saturn placement in terms of house, not in terms of sign. I've got it in the 4th house. But so what else have we got? I mean, I've already mentioned the sun being in the 11th house. So that, like I said, 11th house is about friendships and social clubs. So this shows that Darian will be someone who has a lot of associates, a lot of friends, someone who he likes to express himself with. And also, just touching up on the north and south nodes. You have your south node. That's really interesting, actually. You've got your south node in Gemini and your north node in Sagittarius. Mine is the complete opposite. I have my south node in Sag and my north node in Gemini. And they say that in astrology, your south node is who you were in your past life, and your north node is who you are, who you've come here to be. So in Darian's past life, he was doing a lot of Geminian things, which was being a student and learning and communicating. Whereas in this life, by his north node being Sagittarius, he's switching roles. He's coming here to be more of a teacher and to share knowledge and to share wisdom. So yeah, that's just a quick. Obviously, I could go on for ages, but I've just thought I'll just go through the chart quickly. How would you say I interpreted that, Darian?
Yeah, I mean, everything was pretty much spot on. Everything was pretty much right within the themes. You know, when I look at astrology, I tend to look at the themes and patterns
Yeah.
more so the energy, and I mean, yeah, pretty much spot on with every aspect.
Cool, because another thing I always like, because when I give readings to people, I always stop halfway through and say, look, because I don't want people just to say to me, yeah, it's right. Whereas I'd rather them just be honest with me, because if I'm doing it wrong, or if they're not resonating with what I'm saying, then maybe it gives improvement for me to think, okay, maybe I need to read the chart better, or I need to look at the chart, or I'm doing something wrong. So I always say to people, like, whenever I'm reading a chart or looking at a chart, is to be as honest. If what I'm saying don't make sense, then there's nothing wrong with anyone saying, no, I don't agree with that. Do you get what I mean? So, because ultimately all I'm going by is the chart and understanding of each one of the planets and the signs and the way it works, and just giving my interpretation of it. I mean, I've probably said, maybe what I've said is all correct, but I've just kind of hit it at a very basic level. Do you get what I mean? So there's a lot more that maybe other astrologers would pick up on different things as well. But yeah, but just to give the viewers a bit of an insight, the red and blue lines are what we call aspects in a chart. So they say the blue lines are harmonious and the red lines are not so harmonious. So the red lines are usually what we call squares, which is when two planets are at a right angle, so a 90 degrees. And then we have oppositions, which are when two planets are opposing each other, which is at 180 degrees. And the reason why they're considered as bad angles is because two planets that are 90 degrees of each other will be of the same mode. So, for example, they will both be cardinal, or they will both be fixed, or they will both be mutable. So then that way there's too much of one mode. So they're kind of clashing with each other. And then with the opposition, well, two things opposing each other and not letting each other express themselves. So if you've got your sun and moon opposing in a chart, your moon's not letting your expressive self express itself. And then the sun's, because of your expression, you're not really, your emotional self is then at a disadvantage. So that's why oppositions are bad, because it's like the two lights not letting each light shine, if that makes sense. They're cancelling each other out. And then with the square, it's because of that they're in the same mode, whether it's cardinal, fixed, or mutable. But Adriano, can you scroll up a bit?
Oh, here we go.
You know what I always like to check, where it says dominance, you can check which elements are dominant in your chart, and then you can see like where you can work on it. So go down a bit. Right, so your dominant element, brother, is fire. Although you're an earth sign, see, that's another thing that people don't get. Like, for example, brother Darian is a Taurus, right? So that's the element of earth. So earth is a very grounded, very stable, very structured people. But for example, someone could say, yeah, but you're Taurus, but you're not very grounded, for example. And then, but that could be because you have so many planets in fire signs or in air signs. So then that takes away the groundedness. So in this case, we can see Brother Darian has got 40% of fire. Although his sun is earth, the dominant element of his chart is fire, same as me.
Numbers. 40.74, 11, 11, 22, 22.
Yeah. But like that's the same, brother. I'm a water sign, but I have 40% fire in my chart, 25 water and air, and 10% earth. So I need to work on my earth or try and be a bit more grounded. Whereas your one is air. You've got 11% air. So that's your, it's not weak, but that's the element that's lacking most in your chart. And then go down. You see where it says signature sign? So your signature sign is Aries. So what that does is it takes how many planets, the planets that you have most in an element. So for example, you've got 4 planets in fire signs, and then you have 6 planets in cardinal, 6 of the planets in cardinal signs. So then you take fire and cardinal, which is Aries, because Aries is cardinal fire. So then that becomes your signature sign as well. So there's other little aspects to looking at astrology as well. So for example, my signature sign is Leo, because I have fire is my main element and fixed is my main mode. So fixed fire equals Leo, which will be my signature sign. So there's different ways of looking at it. And so your main 3 planets are the Moon, Uranus, and Pluto. Yeah, interesting. And yeah, there's so much more that you can like dissect it. Are you guys aware of deacons?
No,
yeah.
So basically, in each sign has 3 deacons, which is, so each sign is 30 degrees, and each 10 degree is considered a decan. So for example, each decan is also ruled by a particular planet. So that's like another layer you can add on top. So for example, your Taurus sun is 10 degrees Taurus. So that would make you, so for example, the way it works is each decan is ruled by the planet which corresponds with the other signs which are of the same element. So for example, the 3 planets which would rule Taurus will be the 3 planets connected to the other earth signs. So for example, the first decan, the first 10 degrees of Taurus is ruled by Venus, because Venus rules Taurus and we're in Taurus. So that would be a Taurus. But then someone who has a planet in the second degree, decan of Taurus would be a Taurus Virgo. So that ruling planet would be Mercury for that decan. And then the last decan of Taurus, the ruling planet would be Saturn, because then that would correspond with Taurus Capricorn, if that makes sense. So each decan ruling planet corresponds with the other earth signs in the chart, if that makes sense. So then that adds an extra layer. So for example, a person born in the first 10 degrees of Taurus, that decan will be ruled by Venus, but then a person in the second degree of Taurus will be ruled by Mercury. So that person might be a more chatty Taurus, whereas the other Taurus might be a Taurus who's a bit more loving and with partnerships. And then the last Taurus might be a bit more of a colder, more restrictive Taurus, because that decan's ruled by Saturn. So there's so many different ways you can look into it. I hope that made sense to you guys.
Very
No,
interesting.
absolutely. When you're just speaking on it, I'm starting to see how just personality wise, how, you can say you have two Tauruses, but again, when you kind of get into the details and
Yeah,
start breaking down the relationships, that's when things start to change, because maybe a planet or placement was initially at face value, a better off placement, but upon second or deeper looking, maybe the relationship is not as,
yeah,
it's just gonna be different ways of expressing.
exactly. Because then that kind of, because I always get this question: oh, if all Tauruses, if astrology was real, then all Tauruses or all whatever would be the same. I mean, anyone who's looked into astrology, even for 5 minutes, would know that is the most ridiculous thing for anyone to say. One, you've got what time you're born, so then that depends on where your sun is and what house. There's so many different varying things to look at, and what year you're born as well, because a Taurus born in, just say, so like we're born 10 degrees apart, brother, for example.
Nice.
10 years apart, should I say, not 10 degrees apart.
Mhm.
So for example, just say I was a Taurus and you are, yeah, well that's fine, but the planets would have been in a total different area, so the aspects going to your sun would be totally different to the aspects going to my sun. So it's a very intricate science, but you've just got to kind of, once you get into it, you'll start understanding it. And me, I've only been looking into it like properly like for 7 years. So I've probably still got so much to learn. But the thing is with astrology as well, there's so many different layers to it. You've got like mundane astrology, you've got medical astrology, you have like financial astrology. Like for example, in mundane astrology, if you have planets in the fourth house, it says that you're someone who's against the government, because directly opposite the fourth house is the 10th house, which is to do with the government. So by you having planets in the fourth house in mundane astrology, in the outside world, that would say that you're kind of anti-government, looking at it from a mundane astrology perspective. So there's different systems, and also you've got the Vedic system. I don't know if you guys are aware of that.
Vaguely, well, yeah.
That's like the
yeah. If you go up, or go down.
sidereal.
Yeah, if you go to sidereal, you can also check your sidereal chart.
And there's draconic as well.
Yeah.
Different ways of reading it.
So for example, in Darian's sidereal chart, he's now an Aries. He's not a Taurus, because there's a 23 degree there's a 23 degree lag between sidereal and tropical. So the way from my understanding, from looking at both my sidereal and my tropical chart, I say the sidereal chart is your inner personality, like the one that no one knows, only you know, and that you think, and all your deep feelings and how you really feel, I would say is your sidereal chart. But your public personality and the one everyone knows is your tropical chart. That's how I've interpreted it from looking at both my sidereal, because in my tropical chart, I'm a Taurus moon, but then in my sidereal chart, I'm an Aries moon. And then I sometimes think, sometimes I am quite Martian inside, but I don't really express it on the outside. People will see me as quite fixed and grounded. So again, like the knowledge when it comes to this science is like endless, because you've got, if you scroll down a bit, up, my bad. You see where it says Nakshatras? Well, in the Indian system, you see all there's like 27 of these little subsections. They're called nakshatras, and they're almost like, they're considered like signs within signs, but they correlate more with the moon, because the sidereal system is based more on the moon, which is why I said it's more internal. And then the tropical system is based on the sun, which is more external. So again, neither of them are wrong or right. They're both correct. They're just different systems of looking at
tools of measurement.
Yeah, exactly. Looking at your time. It's like, I always use this example with, like, for example, in religions, the Muslims, they use a lunar calendar, whereas in Christianity and the general public, we use a solar calendar. Neither of them are wrong or right. It's just two different systems of reading time.
No, there's something you mentioned earlier that was like stellium.
Oh, stellium, yeah. A stellium is when you have 3 or more planets in one sign or one house.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And do you know why the MC and the other one, this line that goes straight through?
Yeah.
Like, why is it like tilted?
Ah, okay. This is to do with, I actually heard Santos talking about this the other day. I think this is to do with the time of the year that you're born.
Yeah, okay.
It swings, I think, like, so for example, it swings, it varies, it swings this way and that way. It's like, depending on what time of the
basically
year.
is following the ecliptic based on probably the sun, if it's based on
also, what it is as well, the reason why your MC is different at different times of year is because, how can I explain this to you? You see how, like, we see the sun rise in the northern hemisphere from the right, and then it sets in the left, right? But in the winter time, that arc is smaller because the sun is further away in the Tropic of Capricorn. Hence is why we don't get a lot of light. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So then, because of that arc being closer and further away, that is what also distorts the MC. The MC is the middle of the heavens. It's when you go outside and you've got like a dome, kind of an imaginary dome around you. The MC is the point directly above your head. So if you go back to the normal chart,
you know what this is? You know what I just clocked this is? This is what makes based on that line, that's how you make the whole chart fully 3D.
What's that?
But that line there,
that's
what makes this chart fully 3D. Maybe not fully 3D, but do you see it as like a cross, like a 3D cross? And like based on that point is like, it's where the top of where the sun and the sun is like rising, basically.
Yeah. So basically, if the sun is on the MC, wherever the MC is basically noon. It's the 12 o'clock hand on the clock, the MC. It's the 12, it's when the sun is directly above your head, or, well, for us, it will never be directly above our head because we're not in the equator. So the sun we will never see the sun directly above our head.
When the sun is in...
Any time, even in Cancer.
Yeah, so when it's in Cancer, that's when it's
closer to us.
Closest to the top, right? Or
to the northern, But when it's in Capricorn, it's further away. So 1 second. I've got something I can show you.
Just because I feel like this is somehow linked in, like, now I'm looking at it and I'm seeing the...
Go back, take off this Nakshatra chart and go back to the normal chart and I'll show you something. Right, so for example, there we go. Go down slightly, there we go. Right, go down slightly. I can't see the chart, I can just see the writing.
Is that
There
right?
we go. There we go. There we go. So, for example, you see the top half of that chart.
Mhm.
The top half of the chart would be, if you was to go outside, for example, now, and look south and ignore the sun, just think that the sun wasn't there, and this is the chart for now. I'm just giving you an example, right? And you went outside and looked south, yeah, all those planets, you would see all those planets at the top, basically. So the top part of the chart is south, and the bottom half of the chart is north. That's another thing that I wanted to explain as well. So, because for example, if we're in the northern hemisphere and we look to the North Pole, we would never see the sun, because the sun is always in front of us. You can never see the sun looking north in the northern hemisphere. The only way you can see the sun looking north is from past the equator, if you're in the south looking north. But if you're in the northern hemisphere, you can only see the sun rising and setting if you're looking south.
So you're saying these stars in everything that we're looking at on this chart, you're saying the top half is...
Yeah, that would be looking south, yeah.
But would it not depend on the decan?
What do you mean?
So if the stars are on like a wobble, maybe they can like shift over so that they're actually not even south, they're directly above you.
Yeah, but this is what I'm saying. Oh, could you let me? Could I share my screen? Are you able to do that or not?
I need you to talk me through it.
Okay, go to where it says participants.
Yep, conscious minds.
And then I think you can do it that way.
There's allowed to record local files, allowed to multi-pin.
I'm not sure.
I've given you.
Let me try now if I can. No, I can't share my screen.
I think I have to make you hosts.
No, it's not host. You can just oh, how do you do it, man?
I think it's just a permissions type of thing.
What was your question again, anyway, Adriano? What was the question again? Ask it again, and I might be able to explain it.
It was talking about.
When I was saying about you have to look south to see the sun, yeah, and then you said something about deacons, but I didn't quite understand what you meant by that.
I felt like this whole thing is like, it's like wrapped around so 3D that like sometimes they do, like, say for example, you've got Saturn at a certain degree in a certain sign.
Yeah.
So it means that at that time he's actually directly above you rather than south or north, depending on where you're looking. It could actually be above you or more south, depending on the decan, potentially. I don't really know.
Or the house, you mean?
No, I was actually talking about like the span within each sign to kind of go forwards and backwards. And
yeah, I'm not sure I'm quite understanding your question, bro. Sorry.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't understand my own question, to be honest. This whole it's just interesting looking at the charts and like
basically when you see, like, for example, we're looking directly in front of. I've got a board. 1 minute.
Nice. No, I hear the whole bit of like when you're in the northern hemisphere, you only see the sun in the south. That I do get.
Right. So, for example, right, So just say that this is sunrise and the sun's rising. This is, so when the sun gets to noon, it will be here. And then obviously and then it goes round, it sets, yeah. But then obviously while the sun's been going, the whole wheel's been turning with it. So then at night time, when you look where the sun rising from, then you're going to see the stars start rising at night time. And then you'll start seeing then whatever signs rising and whatever planets are rising, then they will rise when the sun's underneath your horizon, and then it will come back up, and then those ones will disappear. So this wheel will just constantly turn, basically. And then this wheel just constantly turns, and then the sun will then come back up and then come here. So, but what I don't get is what your question was.
Well, I was kind of thinking of that that line, that MC.
Yeah, so that will be this here. Yeah.
So the MC is basically.
The MC is directly above your head. That's what the MC is.
Is the M? So the M, yeah, okay. So the MC is directly above your head. It's not Polaris.
No, it's not. No, that's the MC of the whole Earth. But your MC is different to Polaris. That's what I'm saying. We've all, you know the way you got to think of it, bro, is that you're the North Pole, and you've got your own dome.
Yeah.
So this, what the birth chart is basically showing you is what your dome is and what your. So, for example, if I'm not mistaken, Darion's 10th house was Aries, right? So then, when he was born, the star in the middle of the constellation in the middle of his dome would have been Aries. His own personal dome. Does that make sense?
And I'm just thinking as well, like it's the whole tilt thing. I'm still.
Yeah, forget.
I'm ranting on. I'm ranting on
about the tilt thing. Oh, I wish I could share my screen.
No, bro. The it's that angle that I'm thinking about. Is like it determines. I feel like it must determine a lot, like because by having that tilt, you give yourself. You've then got all the 7 directions of like you've got north, east, south, west because you've got the natural map of like what you've already got in the basic one of east, west, north, south. So then you've already got north, south, but by having the tilt, it gives you north, east, south, west is flat. By putting the middle one up, down, you've got a tilt now, and so you can activate and figure out the. Darian,
I think I understand what you're saying, Adriana, because like basically what I'm hearing is kind of like, are you speaking to like that could kind of explain like some of the well-rounded aspects, because like a typical, if it was just straight up, then it would just be like the normal directions. But because it's a little bit tilted, you still have the normal directions, but a little bit of different coverage.
I see. So what you're saying is, by that tilt kind of leaning to one side, does that energy kind of correspond with something more than the other? Is that what you're trying to say? You know what, brother? To be honest, I don't know the answer to that question. I've never, it's never come across me in my study. So I'm not going to sit here and try and make an answer up that I don't know.
Oh, bro, like it was like I was sitting there and I just suddenly started seeing it when you were describing it, when you were like, oh, I've watched a video about Santos. Like, I need to watch that video because I suddenly started seeing it when I saw it and I was like, boom. And I was like, it's a 3D. I was like, it just shot out like a cube. I just saw a cube all of a sudden, like just pop out of like the astrology chart. And I was like, whoa.
Yeah. I think as well, you see how it was tilted that way? I think once it gets past Cancer, the tilt then starts going this way, if I'm not mistaken. Because I have looked into this briefly.
Because you know what I was thinking as well was that northern and south hemisphere in place on the Earth, depending on the sun, would all change as well. So like if you're in one part of the Earth compared to another part of the Earth,
yes,
like
exactly. That is a part of it.
It's going to be shifted like one way and the other way. I'm thinking of it.
I wish I could share my screen to show you, because it would make exact sense to what you're saying. because I've got the perfect little video to show you something.
If I make you host, it shouldn't stop the recording. So
No, it won't stop the recording.
Let's run it.
Have you done it? Yeah.
It's done.
Yes, perfect. Share screen, desktop.
Nice.
And if I go to here.
Come on, we're running it now. This is an absolute revelation. We should have been doing this from the start.
So let me turn the volume down. Right. So this is the perfect. So look. So look, I know exactly what you're talking about, right? So now, right, what this video is talking about, basically, what this shows is how you get a north and south pole on a flat Earth, and what it's showing is that when you're at the what this is explaining is that we all have our own celestial sphere, our own personal celestial sphere, and half of it is at the top. So this would be that top half of the birth chart, and then the bottom half would be the underneath part where we can't see, obviously. So for example, this would be the 12th house, 11th house, 10th house, 9th house, 8th house, and 7th house, and then the 6th and all the rest would be underneath that. So we've all got our own personal celestial sphere. And then so you can see the sun rises up from here and then it sets here. But this would be the view of the celestial sphere from the equator. But there, because you can see that both poles are on the horizon. You can see this is the South Pole, and then this would be Polaris here, and this would be Sigma Octantis in the south. But then when you move south or north, then that line, you're going to see that line, that diagonal line right now. So for example, when I move north, you see now there's a line going diagonal. Can you see that?
Yeah.
Because I was like, that's where I see Polaris in the sky, is basically the angle it's at now. When I look at Polaris over in England, I'm looking like up here.
Exactly, brother, because the way you work that out is, see, that's by looking at Polaris and knowing. So just say you say, oh, I'm looking at Polaris now and it's about 50 degrees in the sky, for example. Then by you looking at Polaris and knowing what degree it is in the sky, determines what latitude you are above the equator. So if Polaris is 50 degrees in the sky, then you know that you're 50 degrees north of the equator.
And also, I feel like the direction of north and south, would that be no, maybe I'm not.
So for example, look, so if I was to go directly under Polaris, this would be my view.
Yeah, so you know the degrees.
Yeah.
I'm also thinking like still the thing of like, can it account for different places? Like, can you use it to like basically like triangulate if you had someone's birth chart, you'd be able to triangulate where they were born. Do you get what I mean? Like, because
without knowing, you mean?
With the tilt, if it goes round, say that the personal bubble is over in a different country.
Yeah, then the tilt would vary, exactly. The pole would vary, it would.
Is that on the chart that I'm trying to figure out? Would that be accountable for just the tilt?
Yeah, it could be. I don't know if it is, but I know that this top half of the dome is the top half of the birth chart. I do know that for a fact. So for example, you see how they say if you're in the North Pole, that you only get 6 months of daylight and 6 months of night. Well, if you look at this personal dome, it makes even more sense, because this outside dome, the circumference, would be where the equator is. So then once the sun goes past the equator, it would be underneath that, in the bottom half of that dome. So if it's going round, if it's underneath for 6 months and you're at the North Pole, it makes sense of why you're getting no sunlight, because it's in the bottom, it's it's going around the bottom half of the dome that is underneath your feet. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I see what you're saying.
So for example, this going all around here would be the equator.
That's what you see. This bubble is basically your vision of like the warping of the light reflections that are being received. Like, so what you're seeing is being warped into that. Once
the sun starts coming up towards the equator and then it hits spring, and that's the first time that if you're standing at the North Pole, you will start to get a bit of light. And then obviously as it comes towards the Tropic of Cancer closer, then the light becomes 24 hours, basically, because then this part is the Tropic of Cancer up here of the celestial sphere, then it will be going around here. So that's why you get 24 hours of night in the north, and then it switches from south to north. So this is the thing, that the way you have to look at it is that don't think of the sky as an actual dome. Just think of that we all have our own personal celestial spheres, but we can only see half of it. But then depending on whether you go, for example, so like when it goes south and then hits, look, when I go south, then the blue line starts coming up, and then that becomes the South Pole star. So that's how, you know, when they say, oh, South Pole star can't work on a flat Earth. No, it can. You just need to know the model. It just depends on where you are on the Earth. The pole will shift, will tilt up and down, depending on where you are. So if I'm at the south, as I get closer to the equator, this will get lower in the horizon. And then when I get north, then this pole star will start getting close towards my head as I go towards the North Pole. So it's just...
Bro, thank you for breaking that one down. That one has been an actual, like, I've never actually known how to answer that one.
Yeah, it's so simple. Look, this is equator, yeah? Now, if I play it, right, this is at the equator, both poles are on the horizon, right? Then now, as soon as I start walking towards the North Pole, the pole starts rising because I'm getting closer to the North Pole. And then as I get closer, then it will become 90 degrees directly under my head. And then, again, back to the equator. And then as you go south, the other pole starts to rise. So it's like on a swing. It's like the celestial sphere is swinging. And then that is so easy how you get a North and a South Pole on a flat Earth. I mean, a lot of people find that, because in this way, what I like about this as well is that it correlates with the birth chart as well, because then this is the top half of your birth chart. It's a snapshot of so 1 second actually. So that's it basically. This is all I wanted to show you. I hope that's made it clear.
That's wavy, bro. Sorry, I'm just it'll be 1 minute.
Yeah, no problem. Is there anything you'd like to interject on, guys, with that?
The one visual kind of image that I keep seeing is kind of like if you've ever seen like those spinning balls that kind of spin closer towards a drain, or like it's got that center point, and as it gets closer to the inner, it starts spinning faster.
Or is the Coriolis effect?
Possibly, yeah. But that's just kind of what I'm visualizing, is just kind of as the rotation is taking longer, that's kind of giving you that would essentially kind of give you that more daylight in essence. But getting closer, it's going faster. Essentially, it's spinning faster, so that's accounts for the less.
Yeah. But what like, because I struggled with this when I was looking into. By the way, in terms of what model the actual Earth is, I've looked into all of them. I've looked into so many, and the one that makes the most sense to me is this one. But I can't say for a fact that I know this is the truth, because I don't. I think it's something that is kind of, again, no one will ever really know the true answer, because we're never going to experience the whole Earth as a whole. So then, but in terms of like, if you want to, oh, how does this work on this particular model? I would give this example for the stars and how the two different poles work, basically. Because up here, you can see that there's a sun up here. So in this model, they're saying there's a sun actually in the dome, but then once it comes past your bit, it kind of reflects on your personal dome, and you see it as rising and setting, where it's actually not. It's just going around in the sky, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
It's because you can see, so there's a sun up there, but then the sun in your dome is here. It's like a reflection almost. So you've got that aspect to it again. But personally, the personal dome thing really helps me understand, like, the looking at the stars on a flat model.
No, it definitely helps, and
Yeah.
the thing I've kind of been downloading and kind of chewing a lot on recently is kind of like reflection and refraction, because I've noticed so many elements of our existence seem to be reflected. You know, even when we think about light is reflected. We're seeing the reflected wavelengths when we are perceiving that as what we've labeled to be color, but we're seeing reflections of light ultimately. And you kind of hit on it earlier, but thinking of light as kind of like a fluid has kind of been this new approach, to where I've just been thinking about the same concepts of bending light or bending water, you know, and kind of using the two interchangeably and trying to think about terms and kind of use them more interchangeably.
Yeah. Have you looked at the concept of star in a jar before?
No.
No. So basically, there's a concept in like science where if you can get a jar with water in it, and if you like shine a laser at it for so long and give it a particular frequency, it creates like a star in an actual jar. And
Wow.
and I don't know if you've heard of, like, they say above the firmament there's waters. So what people are alluding to is that the stars are just particular frequencies within the water that create the illusion of a star, if that makes sense. Could I do you mind if I share something else?
Please do, bro. Please do.
Right, so let me go to YouTube and I'll show it to you.
Yeah, the star in the jar, man. That's a way.
Check that out. Yeah.
Yeah. Creating stars. And some of these, I feel like the light itself, like say the light from the sun, it is an archetype. It's like an archetypal frequency. And then the light from Polaris and the light from all the different ones. Oh, this is a different one. Oh, this is a whole nother. Man, they upgraded the visuals since I last watched this. It's the secret ritual.
It's a process called sonoluminescence.
The first time I saw sonoluminescence was in a darkened room. I was transfixed to look at this spherical flask of fluid. And you look into the center, and in the center see a glowing blue-purple light, which could be seen with the unaided eye. It looked like a star in the heavens.
Seth Putterman called it the star in a jar, a tiny spot of bright light contained in a flask of liquid. This star in a jar is made when a sound wave is passed through a small bubble inside a flask of liquid. And this sound wave makes the bubble do something remarkable. First it expands, then it collapses. And this collapse happens so violently that vapor molecules trapped inside the bubble slam together and heat up so much that the bubble gives off an incredible burst of heat and light, several thousand times a second.
That was a nice little scientific CGI. It's wavy though. This.
What made the phenomenon so exciting was the temperature of this star in a jar. On its surface alone, the light burns at tens of thousands of degrees. And Seth Putterman now contemplated a tantalizing possibility. Could the core of the collapsing bubble be even hotter? Hot enough for fusion?
One of the mysteries of solar luminescence is to determine exactly how hot the interior of the bubble gets. In the sun, the interior can be millions of degrees, hot enough to cause fusion. And the thought crossed my mind that perhaps inside the collapsing bubble, the interior of the bubble might also get hot enough to cause fusion.
If so, this would be something truly amazing. By simply bombarding tiny bubbles with sound waves, temperatures of over 10 million degrees would be created. And nuclear fusion, the same reaction that powers the sun, would be happening almost effortlessly here on Earth.
So yeah, I just thought I'd share that, guys.
I feel like the core is cold and the surface is hot, but the core is cold. The energy is cold energy. That's my interpretation, throwing it into the duality to be.
Do you know what's interesting, brother? About another thing that I'm really big on is etymology and words.
Oh, I love
decoding etymology and words. Think of an astronaut. Well, what's naut? Naut comes from the word nautical, which is to do with ships and waters. Mm-hmm. So maybe an astronaut, the naut might be alluding to the water side of things, because naut comes from the word nautical, which is a sea terminology or water terminology.
Whoa! So the ancient astronauts.
It's interesting how much, like, even if you think about, we do business in a sea of commerce.
Yeah, exactly. So, like, maritime law. Exactly.
There's so many elements of like water and just that to me is kind of the most interesting concept. And just thinking of like the personal dome kind of even makes way more sense, because it's just like, imagine if we are completely like in a bottle in a sense, and we're like a bottle contained within a bottle, because it's like, for the most part, we're holding fluids in us.
Exactly.
And like we talked about earlier, like with the different frequencies and the different resonance and the different tones affecting the internal waters, creating that kind of pattern-like effect depending on the frequency. It just, from a large societal standpoint, that video kind of summarized kind of the macro scale of kind of what's going on or rather the micro scale of what's going on the macro scale.
Yep, exactly, brother. I totally agree. And like, because you've got the mic, so you've picked up on that, like how what we was talking about earlier, and how different frequencies that affect us. Because obviously, how you're saying, we're all full of water, and they say water has the capacity to memorize particular things. So maybe like when we're born, for example, that frequency blueprint is imprinted within our waters, which gives us a particular tone, or like the brother was saying, a particular vibration. Man, that's what I'm saying. Like, once you start connecting the dots, then things do start to make sense. When like people, like, see, for example, we could just be concentrating on astrology and looking at it from a spiritual perspective, but no, we're tying it up with the science and the material and uniting it rather than separating them. Do you get what I'm saying? That's another issue that people have do as well. Instead of showing the commonality between things, we try to say, oh no, it won't work or whatever. But that's what I'm saying, things are in different layers. It just depends on how you look at it.
Absolutely. And that's something I've kind of noticed just more recently is like the people that operate kind of more so out of like a left brain reductionist approach are very analytical, show me the proof, they want to see the hard tangible data, whereas the people that are a little bit more right brain, it's more subjective, it's more intuition, it's more holistic, considering the relationship of all the parts, and that's definitely a side that I tend to kind of lean towards a little more, is just kind of the more abstract kind of pulling the pieces together, because it's kind of my understanding of like, we can of course reduce everything to its simplest sum of its parts. But if, for instance, if I am just a sum of sensors, and let's say I have the ability to turn my sensors up to 11 and collect more data, but in doing so, I'm also going to get more noise, right? Because I'm increasing the threshold, I'm increasing the power. So yes, I'm pulling in more data, but it also has more artifacts and more things to kind of comb through. But that to me doesn't negate that data. It doesn't make that data bad. It just needs to be refined a little more and maybe reduced to a kind of a usable or a productive kind of baseline. But
yep,
it is very much about, just kind of truly doubling down on the information that you're picking up and cultivating it, because that's what I realized is just through the synchronicities of the conversations we have, of me knowing, oh yeah, okay, I am actually studying the right stuff, because in this conversation, these keywords have come up and these things that I'm tying all together. So yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, brother. Like, you can give you can give physical or like scientific like explanations to what we talk about spiritually as well. Like, it's not all just airy fairy stuff that we're all imagining. But like, do you get what I mean? So for sure, man, it just, again, I think this just depends on like maturity and your willingness to learn. Because basically it's like, I saw a quote yesterday. It says, what was the quote? It was something along the lines of, if you think you know everything, then you've got nothing to learn, basically.
Yeah.
So,
and I think that's like even the power, I'm big on the power language too. And it's like, I fully believe, your vocabulary determines your reality. So it's like, for instance, if somebody is constantly saying, I know, they're not allowing any room for any new information, because perceptually they have already determined this is no use of value to me. This information isn't good. I already know and I'm good, versus that willingness to kind of, oh, okay, this is something new. Let me figure out how I can take this new piece of information and kind of work it into my system and make the parts harmonious,
Exactly. That's why I always try to say, as far as I'm aware, that's the one I try to use as much as I can. Like, as far as I'm aware of, to my understanding, they're the kind of terms that I always try to use when I'm explaining something, because it's like you said, brother, to say when it's like me saying, oh, I know the Earth's flat, for example. It looks it and I experience it that way, but do I know for 100%? No, I don't. I can't. I'm not going to sit here and lie. Do you get what I mean? But when I look outside and the way I experience reality, that is the way I experience it, from a level perspective. Do you get what I'm saying? And like, I know how to read the stars from that perspective, but because I showed you, because of my understanding of the personal dome and how, do you get what I'm saying? I have my own understanding of it, but is that the actual way it's working? I don't know. Do you get what I'm saying? This is the thing with another thing that I always say to people. When you first get into this type of knowledge, I think it's a bit ego-based at first. It's think, oh, I'm right and you're wrong. Whereas now, I don't care about what's right and wrong. I just want to understand what the model or what the person is trying to say, whether it's right or wrong. Like, for example, I've spoke to Adriana about this before. You've got a flat Earth model, for example, but there's like 3 different flat Earth models. You've got a disc flat Earth model, you've got a square flat Earth model, and then you've got a diamond flat Earth model. All those 3 groups argue with each other, right? Although they all have something in common, they've still got, oh, this can't work because the pole star can't work on a disc. Or how can you have a square flat Earth? Because then how can you go from one place to another and automatically end up at the same place? Oh, it's because it's like Pac-Man and it's a loop fit. Like, there is millions of different theories. And then you got concave Earth saying, oh, you're all wrong. We live inside of a ball and we're living in the inside edges and the sky is the core in the center. I mean, there are so many different models, and from looking at them all, they all make sense in the way they're explained, but which one is true, who knows?
I feel like still, once we kind of determine something more substantial, it is a good move after that to come to some kind of discussions. And like, I'm always wanting this whole level up of maximum amount of people. I've got it in my head now that the way is to maximize the union and the harmony, and so bring some harmony to this would be nice, basically.
Yeah. I mean, like, it was a subject that I was so, like, I really went down that rabbit hole. But in the last year and a half, I've kind of, I still talk about it when I have like these chats with people one-on-one and we discuss things. But it's like, as much as I love the subject and it's so interesting, at the same time, I find it really frustrating because it's like something inside of me, like, eating away, thinking, oh, which is it? What is it? Like,
oh, it's like that with everything, though. It's like the
yeah,
one
but that one is, to me, that one is the most bugging one to me. To know where we are, not to really know where you are, like in a physical. Not that it. See, to some people it doesn't matter. They say, oh, what does it matter? I've still got to get up and go to work. I've still got bills to pay. And fair enough, but if that subject is playing a part in why we have to go to work and the way the controllers have created a specific reality in our mind, then it just depends on, again, which way you look at it. But I love the subject because I'm into the stars and astrology. It makes sense for me to kind of try and know and understand how it would work in relation to that. So this is why I've looked into, how does the South Pole work on a flat Earth and whatnot. But again, although I could show people that explanation or that video, it don't mean that it's true. It's just an explanation.
A big one that gets my head spinning about like where we are is like looking around at all these Tartarian buildings, what they call Tartarian buildings, which I'm just talking about. Just there's obviously a messed up timeline. Like, the timeline is so completely obviously fucked. And there's also a bunch of half-buried buildings everywhere. There's these mad, super embellished half-buried buildings. Some of them are not even, like, I'm pretty sure I live in one. Like, I've got a basement in my house and stuff, and like all of the house got a basement. They're super embellished, and it's like they're basically, these buildings are everywhere. And I'm just looking around and I'm really like, what is this place that we live in? like because the history timeline doesn't make sense. Like saying that all this stuff was being built by over here. It's like the Georgians and the Victorians and stuff like that. And then over in Australia, you got a different story. Over in America, you got a different story. China, like literally everywhere. And you've got like whole cities and stuff, like literally Paris, Rome, like Berlin, like these mad structures that are all Greco-Roman. All of the structures are called either Greco-Roman or Gothic. You got these two types everywhere. And a load of them are half buried. And you're looking at these churches. Like I was walking with my dad the other day. I was just like, look, you see that the window of that church is like literally down by your ankles. He's like, oh yeah, it's almost like the ground was like a different level at one point. And I was like, that's exactly it. That's exactly it. Because this don't make no sense. Like why you got the top of a window, like a fancy window as well, like just to make that, just it's stuck. And then you've got the obvious ones where they've literally dug it out. And yeah, the whole thing of like it being underwater and then like the water dissipating and then like what's being left is mud and then that getting lifted. That's what Dave was saying. That was
right. That's a very interesting theory. It makes sense. So basically what he's saying, there was a flood and then once the water dissipated, the mud kind of came back up.
What Dave said was it was like it's like the dish. Did you watch that? It was like a lost history of flat Earth, where basically saying the moon was like a picture of the Earth.
Yeah, but I've seen that theory. Yeah.
So those sections, basically, the section we're in is the only section that isn't ice. Everything else is ice.
Yes.
And so when it moves round, the ice melts. And it first is going to lift up the Earth and then it's going to flow out. That's what Dave was saying.
Yeah, I've seen that video. I like that. I like that concept. It's a very interesting concept, and it makes sense of like why there was probably ice ages and all that. And
but there could just be an ice age as well.
I've seen that video. It's a really interesting video. But again,
that's what I'm saying. It's the same thing. It's like or is it like another one where because the circumstances of that one are quite elaborate. Well, I mean, God bless. I mean, it's an explanation. God bless. But you know, the main thing is that water could explain it, and then beyond it, this whole thing of like us being a picture of the moon and stuff like that. It's like we still don't know where we are. And like we need to get something more substantial still. Pray, conversations, and it's gonna
maybe we're not anywhere. Maybe we're in a computer game. Who knows, bro? Like that's what I'm saying. Like I'm not saying that's right, but the thing is, like, sometimes this is the thing about this, when you start going down the rabbit hole, it's just like
I hear you.
It could, like, it's just but one thing that I kind of feel like about wherever we are, or I just kind of think wherever we are, we're trapped in like maybe a realm or a particular frequency. It could be like, for example, you see how you like got a rainbow and you've got 7 different colors, which are all 7 different frequencies. Maybe we're just trapped in a particular frequency. And then because of the way we're resonating, we're trapped in this frequency. Maybe if we had lighter bodies, we could kind of come out of this frequency and go up an octave or whatever. But again, it's just, again, I keep saying again, who knows? And I think another thing, bro, as well, that sometimes I think maybe we're not meant to know, because if we did know, we wouldn't be here in the first place, because we'd be as knowledgeable as the creator or the creation of this place where we are. I mean, if we knew the answer, then I don't think we'd be incarnated on Earth, because then there'd be no point.
It'd be nice if well, this is what we're going to manifest and we're going to find it, but it's a way of communicating that in a simple word. Like, we live in a bubble or something. Everyone's going to come to a decision, and just be like, that we just live in a bubble. And it's the ultimate, like what you were saying about us just living in a simulation. Like that's basically the final, that is the ultimate way of viewing it. Like if a simulation is going to have certain rules. So to fully agree that it's in a simulation it's going to take like a path. But that is what I'm going to start saying now. I'm just like, I've had my revelation. If someone asks me like straight up, like, are you a flat earther? I'll be like, nah, I just think we live in a video game. If I need to dodge out of it, you know what I mean? If I'm in one of those situations where I don't want to say, maybe sometimes I say, yeah, I'm a flat earther. Other times I'd be like, I just think we live in a video game.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, I mean, because even like someone was telling me today, a cousin of mine come and visited me who I haven't seen in a long time, and he said that he experienced the whole metaverse thing, and he said he went to a cinema with someone and actually watched a movie, and he said it felt so real, and so he said it was mind-blowing. And then he kind of pondered the question to me, so who's to say that this ain't that, or what? I don't know, like I don't know, but that's why sometimes like I don't kind of ponder on those questions too much. But I reckon the best way is to kind of let it happen naturally, right? Just from learning over the years, and then we might just come to a conclusion because it's like what we're trying to do is get to the end of the movie in the middle of the movie. We haven't come to the end of our movie yet, so the movie's still going. So you get what I'm saying? Maybe we need to be more patient.
Absolutely. I think something that was a tremendous help for me was studying and understanding the hero's journey. So if you're not familiar with the hero's journey, it's essentially a cycle that every popular story, pretty much everything is kind of based upon this premise of this hero going on this journey, kind of being met with obstacles, how they kind of adapt and overcome, and then circle back around to the initial kind of call to adventure, right? Because that first kind of call to adventure is kind of what initiates the hero on that cycle. And so it's in a lot of ways, you know, each of us are on our own individual hero's journey. But the thing I find the most interesting about the kind of infinite hero's journey is that if you think about the word hero, you've got her and then O. So it's again that kind of concept of returning to the womb, returning to the kind of matrix in a sense. So it's like, maybe again the whole premise is not to escape or not to, you know, fight against again, but to understand these natural systems and to understand them to a level to where you're able to develop and create new solutions, new individualized, tailored solutions that work for you, you know, because ultimately to me, your reality in this existence is based upon what you can manifest, right? So it's like if you manifest a diseased, ill, sickened body, right? That's kind of like the lowest, easiest. It's really easy to destroy something, right? But to build something up, to build a legacy, to build a community, all these things take a lot of organization, a lot of power, a lot of willpower, you know, and it goes back to that kind of hero element of what your adversary in life is and what you're kind of fighting against. But ultimately, it still goes back to that identity piece, you know, which again, I would consider it to be like a program. You know, we choose to be who we are. And I think a lot of the disconnect comes from when people are not able to disconnect from that identity and allow themselves to pivot or to become someone new or try something new, you know, because we get locked into these identities and it's just like, no, I have to operate this way. I have to operate this way, you know, and that's kind of where the detriment comes from, because if you don't allow yourself that kind of free range to kind of test new methods and test new protocols, you're never going to evolve, you know. And it's my full belief that the goal of this existence is not perfection. It never was perfection, because if it was, we would not exist. Perfection is a total sum, all blackness, you know. It's everything collided in on each other. But through this separation, we're able to visualize contrast, right? When I have a differing opinion or a perspective from somebody, that's the contrast that I'm able to utilize in whatever manner I choose. You know, I could look at it in a destructive, bad way and consider that person to be not of like an equal stature, or I can look at it the other way and just, again, understand that everybody is on their individualized journey, and it's going to happen on their own time. You know, like I used to, very early on in my spiritual journey, I was heavy on kind of preaching,
Yep,
but I
same.
realized, yeah, it's something I realized, that it's like, just because I was in that warrior, you know, full armor, ready to fight the dragon, didn't mean my best friend was. And so by me kind of pushing him in the room with the dragon and opening the door, and he doesn't have the armor, he doesn't have the sword, he doesn't have the technique, I just killed him. And again, you have to understand that information is powerful, and it's not for everybody. It will never be for everybody. That's why you've had throughout history, you've had initiation schools, occult, these types of rites of passages with certain information, because they understood the weight of certain information. So it's like certain things, I've kind of moved past the concept of trying to get everybody to understand or get everybody on board. You know, I'm kind of just in the premise of, hey, I'm building this arc. You're more than welcome to come on board. But if not, you know, it's not going to change my existence. It's not going to change my purpose. It has nothing to do with me, you know. And that's kind of how I approach life. Is I don't allow any external factor to affect me internally, because I know that I am the developer and I can code a solution to anything that comes up. But it's about my willingness to adapt.
Brother, you could not have explained what you just said any better. You explained it perfectly. Spot on. I can't disagree with anything you just said. Like exactly what you just said. You just got to, yeah, because it's like, you get, this is the realization I've come to as well. It's just like, I've stopped that, like trying to preach to people and trying to say, oh, look, but this, like you said, because, for example, you can tell all this information to someone who's in the matrix, who's got a family, who has a 9 to 5. They go crazy. They leave their missus. They leave their kids. Like the brother said, not all of us are not prepared for this information. Mm-hmm. They do say the truth hurts, and it really does hurt. So, like, I couldn't agree with you more, brother. Totally.
Yeah, I feel that. Feel the analogy as well of the dragon. You're seeing that, like. But I think it's like, I guess one of my personal things that I take from it is that, like, what we're really doing is like, we're actually teaching people how to make armor. That's what the goal really is. If you teach someone how to make their own armor, and to how to scale up, and how to defend, and how to resource, I guess that's, but also, like, you know, it's like really, I guess deep down, when you want to do it in the ultimate way, it's like, we want to make a platform of like just pure self-discovery. Pure self-discovery is ultimately the true goal, which it requires like a perfect balance. One side of the balance is safe environment. Other side of the balance is constantly new things that you've got to deal with independently, because those new things that you deal with independently are where you learn the lesson. And so there's a perfect balance there, that finding that would ultimately lead to like these full-on, just highly evolved cultures and stuff like that. I think, like, really, like, and yeah, like I guess the shift that we need to start seeing is just one of like seeing like the balance and walking that middle line, because the walking that actual line in life is making like basically like tough love sometimes, not always, but sometimes that middle line is basically tough love. That's a way of describing it, where you know that you just got to kind of, the best thing to do is just to sit back and just be patient and let life roll by. And so yeah, it's like I don't know, that's I'm looking for this shift in consciousness. I'm still, my ego's tied in for me. And
you know, when you say shift in consciousness, you talking about as an overall or personally?
It's linked in, because it's like, I feel like for my personal shift, I need to bring the collective.
Yeah.
Gentlemen,
It's tied in. They're one's not separate from the other, basically. Yeah, I understand you. But that makes sense, because I think that if the world if everything was a better place or had more peaceful, then we'd just naturally be more on a higher frequency and be more happy. And do you get what I'm saying? So that does make sense in what you're saying. But then it's just that the thing is, it's just that I'm not saying that not everyone wants that. I'm surely, I think deep down within us, we all want to be that. Do you get what I'm saying? But it's just that because of the different distractions and different things or different.
I feel like all we got to do really is, you just got to save one generation. Like, have one generation that's.
You just got to save yourself.
I agree with your brother.
Like,
the brother,
you
yeah.
can't, brother, because it's like you could never. How could you even measure that? You know, there's no way to even measure if you saved everybody. And it's just like, of course, you can set the bar high and you want to aim for the moon, right? But when you are realistically met with opposition, you have to create realistic solutions that allow you to move past that obstacle. You know, you can't operate out of an imaginary solution that doesn't exist yet. We have to work with what we've been given. And it's just like, you have to build with all the Lego pieces you have before you can get more Lego pieces. You know, you have to use everything you have, every single last piece, and build a structure with that. And outside of that, it's not for you to worry about. You know, that's kind of where like mastering the art of detachment, I would say, comes in. And that has kind of been a really integral part for me, is mastering the ability to detach, because attachment is the root of all suffering. You know, and when you attach yourself to an idea, a concept, like, you know, that's an attachment to the idea that you have to save everybody. And if you really looked at the root of where that came from, most likely that was put on you by either society or some external influence, you know, and that's kind of the deciphering process of reprogramming the subconscious to fully work with like an operating system that's tailored towards you, you know, so that way you're not operating off the default base operating system, and it's easy to hack into you. It's easy to manipulate you because your password's 1234 on your soul. You know, it's like changing the password, creating the operating system that is tailored to you. You know, that to me is the ultimate goal.
I kind of like it for me.
Gentlemen, I hate to break in there real quick, but I'm gonna have to dip out real quick. I'm gonna let y'all continue.
No problem, brother. You should have interjected a bit more into the conversation, man. We didn't hear from you much.
I was taking it in. I was taking it all in, man. I was taking it all in. It's been a beautiful experience.
Likewise, brother. Yeah. God bless you.
And I'm also as well. I'm gonna get with y'all. Hit me on the Telegram. I have to make an issue really quick.
Take care, brother.
Blessings to all.
Big blessings. Big blessings to you. God bless you, man.
Yeah, now what Brother Darion said is a really interesting point, because I was watching something the other day and saying, look, I know we all want to help people, but then someone was saying, But if they don't get it, fair enough. You might be upset that haven't got it, but just be happy that you get it, and then so that at least that you can do it. Do you get what I'm saying? But again, I understand you, Adriana, as well, because I have that feeling as well. Because there's times where I get frustrated when I see people do particular things, and I'm like, oh, like. But then you have to be disciplined and think, look, that's their life. Because the thing is, we might like want to tell people, oh, do this and do that, but I know for a fact that when people start telling me what to do, I don't like it. So why should I tell other people what to do? You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's not a thing of telling people what to do. It's like, I think it's, for me, it's like how I've like coded myself is that I've put it in my subconscious that I want to save everyone. And like, that's just, it's there on the tilt and the spectrum. I get the kind of aspect of like, really my attention should be just drawn, focused on just me. But I guess like ultimately I am going to have an opinion on the external world and what kind of shift it goes in. And for me, it's on the scale of, let's go for it. Everyone goes together and let's run it. Let's see what happens. Like, everyone different, but at the same time, everyone kind of finding the peace, finding the harmony. Like, I don't know, that's something that it just runs right now. I feel like it's the message that it's just channeling through, I guess, right now. And
no, man, that's all good, man. There's nothing. That's it's a beautiful message that you have, and it's a beautiful intent that you also have. But like, I think what the brother was saying is that we have to be like more realistic in our
as well. Yes,
approach of like how we're gonna do it and whatnot.
The actions that I take on that are purely focused personally on myself and a few of those around me, because I'm not evolved myself to a point where I could even start putting actions into saving big groups. Do you know, I haven't evolved that aspect of my archetype enough to physically implement any of those visualizations. Like, so yeah, I'm just like, right now I just focus on those around me and myself.
Do you know what? Brother, you go on and I'll say after, because you was going to say something first.
I was just going to hit on something, but if you think about like back to like primitive days where it was like simple hunter gatherer, right? Your role is a provider. You were not worried outside of, let's say, your tribe or your local community, right? There was no way you could possibly fathom feeding the entire world when your tribe needed you. You know, your tribe needed you to go out, get the food, and bring it back. And that was your sole purpose. So long as you were able to provide and be a component of that tribe, your purpose was fulfilled. But again, as I spoke upon the complexities as time has has progressed, these complexities and your access to the world now, right? Because previously we didn't have access to the entire world, the entire world's opinions, the entire world's pain. But if you think about that, how could you energetically shoulder on the collective pain, you know, the entire collective pain and burden of that suffering? There's no way. You know, you've got your own bit of pain and suffering that you are carrying, you know. So it's just like, when you think back, even in, like I said, in ancient times, you were still generally concerned with yourself primary. Let me make sure I'm good to survive, and then the tribe. And then outside of that, there really wasn't too much because the access wasn't there. But just because the access is there doesn't mean that, just because you can doesn't mean that you always should, you know.
Yeah, it's a very important point, brother. What I was going to say to Adriano is, again, this might sound a bit like not even fantasy, but like it's more to deal with, like, you see, like how you want this feeling of like this one consciousness and this unity, and for us to all go together. What all that could be is just that could be for example, they say that we've come from heaven and we've descended and come onto earth. maybe those feelings you're having are those feelings of before you came into this incarnation, of that one unity and that peace and that love and that feeling. And that feeling is still kind of with you, and you want everyone to come back to that feeling, if that makes sense. It's almost like you're still in the garden. That feeling you have of us being all together and being peaceful is the feeling when we're in the garden. But we've been currently kicked out of the garden and we're here. So
spiritual war. Now we're in the war.
Yeah. So it's just like maybe that, you know, that yearning you have inside of you, Adriano, of that one, like being pieces. Maybe that's just you tapping back to your original form, your spirit form before.
Well, I feel
you
like
came into the flesh, if that makes sense. I hope I made that clear. I wasn't sure.
Well, no, bro, because when you're saying that, I was thinking like, no, 100% you're right. Because like, I literally have this thing which I've always described really poorly, which is that basically it's like something that you remember, but you don't remember it, and it keeps you going. It's just like, it's what it just gives you energy on certain times, and like, it makes you like just make certain things happen. And like, it's like this burning force, but now you've described it, it's like this yearning from before of like this unity. I can see it, to be honest. Like, for me, I personally feel like right now is like a bad time, basically. And like, it's ultimately gonna change. So the driving force within the program should be to correct it. And so ultimately what I'm striving for is unity within it. Because right now what's happened is complete separation through distractions and all kinds of madnesses. They've basically got us sweeping stuff under the rug. That's what's happened. And that stuff needs to all come into the full reality of like, I do think we need to collectively shoulder this at some point. That's basically the next move. We need to shoulder this. It is a lot of grief, which everyone has to take on board. But not everyone, like, you know what I mean? It's all in balance. I'm speaking kind of in I don't really know what, now I'm speaking of stuff that I have no idea. Just like, again, it's stuff.
Yeah, no, I think we all are sharing that balance, right? Because again, we all are existing within this one map. So it's like, regardless on if, let's say again, my life is great, I think it's a great time, but I go to the grocery store and the person ringing me out is having a terrible time and they're having a terrible existence. And that, again, that bit of contrast is, again, it essentially is, it's an opportunity to observe, but it's just like not every observation deserves a reaction. And I think this is something I've kind of learned over just my spiritual journey is kind of previously more so to that kind of Aries nature. I was very reactive, very very passionate, but understanding that like a jet, when you channel that fuel and when you channel and essentially get that thrust into a actual pattern that you want, that's jet fuel, right? That can take you places very fast. But again, it's about cultivating, you know, for me, it was about cultivating that inner fire and being able to channel it in the right way, you know, and then by doing so, I'm able to help more people. And guess what? All I'm doing is being authentic to myself and evolving. But by doing so, I'm helping people. And that's the strangest thing to me in the world, because it seems backwards. It seems like I have to help people first, but it's, again, it's not like first you have to feel it and then the action comes, right? It's you have to feel abundant and then the abundance follows. It's not the abundance comes and then you feel abundant, right? Because if I gave you $1 million, but you felt undeserving, you're going to do everything to self-sabotage that opportunity, and it's not going to help you in any way, shape, or form, because you yourself internally don't feel deserving of that, you know? And so that's why it again, it's like you could pour the finest gold into somebody, but if they don't have a cup, if they don't have something to hold that, then it's just like a drain, right? It's just being poured through. And that's kind of where, you know, for me on my journey, I could see like forms of resentment kind of coming in because I'm thinking, well, geez, I'm pouring like the best information, the highest quality care, everything that I'm giving people, all of this, right? But it's not sticking. It's just kind of seems wasteful to me. You know, they're not utilizing this information to improve their quality of life or make anything better. So that made me feel resentful. And I didn't like feeling that way. So again, I told myself, well, just let me stop trying to force this onto people. If somebody asks me, of course, I'll willingly give the information, but that's the kind of balance in the dance between will versus force. Anytime you're forced to do something, you're not going to do it enthusiastically. You're not going to do it with the best of spirits, right? Because you're being forced. It's against your will. It's going counterclockwise. And so it's just like when you understand when people are willing, the information is there. They'll come, you know, they'll know where to come. But I think that's the best thing you can do is just make yourself a representation of symbol of everything you want to see in the world, all that change you want to see. Make yourself essentially the perfect model so that when somebody summons your name, summons your energy by speaking your title, they feel that energy, right? They feel that massive energy signature, because that's all our titles are, is just energy signatures. And when you speak somebody's name, when you summon an energy signature, it could be somebody as small as like an ant. You know, they could have like an insignificant energy signature. Or you got those individuals that they step into a room and the whole temperature changes, you know, like you feel the room just change. And it's, to me, that's the only thing you can control. You know, you can't control when people are going to want the information, you know.
The thing is though, some people out there, and I'm talking about everyday normal people, they are in positions where they can affect large groups of people. That's just the reality. And within that, that's where like our own kind of personal journeys as well, and philosophies and actions ultimately are going to really affect the big body of people, because that's like the difference between like a massive news thing, or a whole series on Netflix, or like a whole I don't know, just like another thing like on the internet or something. But basically there is people out there that have they have these lives basically, and like whatever we want, I feel like we have manifestation of our own destinies. We can create whatever we want to create. So ultimately, like there is this potential for kind of just like when it comes to, I'm not trying to say in the battle that we have to always go in, because the truth is that in chess you need to play defensive sometimes, and the warrior is very much one that should be separate from all emotion. If you're being a warrior, you don't want to be an emotional warrior, so you need to have that separation and detachment as whenever you're in that archetype of fight. But that's why I see it kind of like astrology, because it's always shifting. Sometimes on this path to helping people, you need to be a warrior, but sometimes you don't. You need to be more of a Venus. And
you gotta be like the gardener. Yeah, like the gardener and then the warrior, you know, oscillate between the two, you know, tend to the plants, water, but again, be able to defend your land, be able to defend your territory, because that's kind of also, I tie that to Mars, right? It's how you defend. And it's just, if you don't have an ability to defend your belief system, then again, I can come in and override your beliefs and put a belief into you if I wanted to be manipulative, you know, and override your default settings. And at that point, again, that to me is essentially a character assassination, because at that point, I've took out your character and implemented a version of who I want you to be, you know, and that's kind of that projection and the judgment aspect from the society standpoint. But when you understand that, again, you know, even if you are meant to be a villain, by being the best villain you can be, you're going to make, you know, you're going to be a worthy adversary for Batman. So it's just like there's both sides, and you have to appreciate both sides, because without the Joker, Batman isn't the hero he is, you know, without that worthy adversary that truly puts him to the test. And so that's why I feel like we need kind of this resistance, because again, if everything was just easy and it was just like, all right, everybody, let's join hands and walk off to the promised land, like that would be the most anticlimactic, you know, to me from a storytelling standpoint, that is not a riveting story. You know?
It's just it's more like as well though it's the people that are walking in the shoes of like real difficult jobs basically, and like really like every day like going to work with some of the harshest stuff basically, but really have the ability to affect a majority of people basically, save a lot of people, but at the same time face to face with some horrible stuff. And like it's the inspiring thing that keeps them going, because all of those people, like, God bless them, because if they were to stop right now, the world will be even more of a like an atrocity than it is like right now. And yeah, it's just something in it, because it ultimately it is us. We got to remember that what we're talking about is us, and that when we come face to face with it, it's horrible. Like there's words that like you know, just horrible. It's just the best way of saying that for now. I don't even know, but ultimately people are in this kind of, like I say, it's not even just a fight all the time, because if we're talking about raising the whole consciousness collective, everyone, because that's ultimately the best way of doing it. We're talking about fixing the fucked up shit that some people are dealing with right now, the majority of people don't see. And there's some people are literally dealing with it, and some people it's happening to. Sometimes, most of the time, it's kids.
And to me, my solution to that is detachment, because ultimately, that to me is what causes all of our suffering.
This is the thing. Only in the warrior. See, the warrior.
No, I think fundamental, because humans attach. You know, humans attach to concepts, places, things, political parties, all types of labels, right? But these labels are representations of energy. And so again, if for instance, if I'm going to the doctor, I need to be able to articulate what my symptoms are internally. If I give the doctor a complete wrong set of symptoms because I'm not in tune with my body, and I'm like, my spleen hurts or something, you know, and I'm completely giving him the wrong information, well, then I'm going to receive a improper diagnosis, you know? And so the doctor needs accurate information to accurately create a regimen of care, you know? But for my whole thing on it is that everybody chooses the experiences throughout their existence, right? For good or bad. It's like, who am I to say that an experience is bad for somebody just because I see them in poverty? You know, if they wanted to experience that, if in another lifetime they were so rich that it wasn't even funny, and they wanted to experience the other side of that duality in this lifetime, who am I to interfere with that? You know, I don't feel that's my place to interfere with somebody's experience. You know, when the invitation is presented, then I know that that's a willing thing. So I'm welcome, you know, but in any other scenario, it doesn't feel like I'm welcome inside of their home, you know?
So my thing that's coming through is that if rather than like, 'cause part of me basically is saying that if we're going to detach from it, we have to grieve continuously. We have to grieve like the whole time. When we're not detached, we have to be grieving, and then swinging between these different archetypes, because if we are able to love ourselves in any way, shape or form, then we should be grieving.
Well, I'm curious why you say grieving.
Because of the atrocities that take place. I'm talking about actual atrocities that happen.
Would you consider destruction as a necessary component of this existence?
Well, I'm just saying that I see it as like, we're playing through different roles and stuff like that. And I don't actually think we should be grieving this whole time. I think there's different levels. Like the whole detachment thing, I apply the detachment thing in terms of like the physical actions that we're taking. I think detachment is important for certain times when we're fighting, essentially. And then other times, like if we want to truly like love, then we need to basically look at what's going on, first of all. And when you see it face to face, it's going to make you cry because it's horrible. That's the truth.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think from what my understanding is, what Brother Darion was saying about detachment is, I don't think he means detaching from everyone else. I think he means like detaching from the system in itself. So like, for example, if you don't want to be a part of the suffering that you see, then don't do things that will help you be a part of it. So for example, I'll give you an example, voting. I don't vote because I don't want to be responsible for my vote putting someone in power then who will go and blow up innocent kids, for example. So by me detaching myself from that thing is that I don't have no guilt or no that I had any part to play within that particular thing that happened. From my understanding, that's what I think Brother Darion means from detaching. Am I correct?
Yeah, for the most part, like detaching from the actual because again, so like when I'm speaking on detachment, I'm more so speaking on the kind of top level reasoning behind the actions, right? Because before the action comes, there's a whole series of processing that has to occur, right? And typically that's going to be initiated with a thought. But essentially our thoughts are not us, right? Our thoughts are not something that we should consider to be us. Because if you have a wild, crazy, negative thought, then you could internalize that